Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, a podcast with one host about one console, Xbox. I am said host Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of March 21st, 2024, including PlayStation 5 Pro leaks are surging as murmurs of new Xbox hardware leave us to speculate how the brand will respond. A new trailer has been released for Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra, a new game from an all-new team being written by famed industry veteran Amy Hennig. Xbox just roadmapped the best month yet for Game Pass, leaving us much to look forward to, and more. On this day in Xbox history, in the year 2006, 18 years ago, The Godfather, the game, was released for the original Xbox in the US. Published by Electronic Arts and developed by EA Redwood Shores, who many of us know a little better as Visceral Games, the minds, the team behind the original Dead Space series. Yeah, Godfather, the game. I remember this game being kind of a hot deal, big deal when it came out. I remember it was like, oh, wow, the Godfather game is actually pretty good. And it was during that hype where, everyone was responding to GTA 3. So, companies were looking around, like, what IP can we use or what kind of thing can we spin up that's, GTA adjacent? Spider-Man was becoming a GTA game. Activision was doing the freaking true crime games. Godfather license was being pulled out of thin air by EA so they could try and compete with the GTA 3 hype. And, from what I remember, this was received as one of the better GTA-like games, although I have no real connection, especially with the first one. But I remember the second one, I think that came out, I want to say the second one came out in 08, 09, maybe 09, I don't know, pretty well, because I remember going to my buddy's house, and he was like, hey, I got Godfather 2, and I was like, hey, I'd rather play Halo 3, and then he kept making me watch him play it, and I just couldn't give a shit about it. That friend always made me watch him play The Godfather 2 and one of the many WWE games. That's a bad friendship right there. If you're growing up and you just want to play Alien Hominid and Halo 3 and your buddy makes you watch him play The Godfather, it's time to get a new friend. Just kidding. That's a mean thing to say about a guy I don't know anymore. But hey, welcome to episode 251 of the Xbox On podcast. Rest in peace, EA Redwood Shores / Visceral Games. Mike Clark writes in and says, good morning, fellow gamers. You have now entered the Xbox On zone. You are about to enter another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and of sound, but of mind. A journey into Xbox, Mountain Dew, and Taco Bell-fueled imagination. That is, of course, a little riff on the Twilight Zone intro. I like that. Good job, Mike Clark. Welcome. Happy to be here with all you guys today. All right, let's kick off this week, as we do every week, with the notable games releasing. There are a shit ton of games to talk about here, so let's just a couple of these games I have a couple things I just want to mention, so let's run through this list real fast, starting of course with a game that's not coming to Xbox this week because it already came to Xbox a year ago, but is coming to PlayStation, which is Hi-Fi Rush, the famed Xbox game, once Xbox exclusive, now turned multi-platform. Hi-Fi Rush will hit PlayStation on March 19th, so the time you're listening to this podcast, it's already there. You're already playing it on your PS5. You're getting all the fucking haptics out of your DualSense controller. You're saying, oh my god, I love the way this controller vibrates in my hands and all the ways an Xbox controller never could. And, it's just how it goes. Xbox games are coming to PlayStation, and pretty soon we'll all be fucking drinking Pepsi out of a Coke fountain because all the brands will turn into one. And then we will go bald and lose our eyebrows and become one race. Next game coming out this week is Dragon's Dogma 2. Now, the reviews are in for Dragon's Dogma 2. I don't remember in 2012 Dragon's Dogma being a huge fucking deal. I remember it being a game that's some nerdy ass motherfuckers were like, this game's good. But that's all I remember about Dragon's Dogma. I don't care about it. I didn't pay attention to it. I was probably playing Halo 4 or fucking what came out in 2012 that I cared a lot about. I was probably playing New Super Mario Bros. U for Nintendo Wii U, a console that I was so hell-bent on convincing everyone was going to be a thing. I don't know. I didn't Dragon's Dogma 2 wasn't it for me. So I never paid any attention to the first one, and now the second one's here, and it seems like people are super hyped on this game. Like, it's the reviews are in pretty damn good. You know, the critic score, that is, and it just seems like the hype level is through the roof. Like, it's one of those games where it's like 500,000 people played the first one, and now here we are 12 years later, and the game has like 10 million fans yearning for a sequel. So I mean, I talk about a cult hit, that first game, because it seems like the second one is much anticipated. So I'm excited for people who are clearly looking forward to it, and we'll have to just see, is this the next Elden Ring? Is this the next game that people are just going to talk about, and I'm going to sit here going, it's not my thing, I'm going to go play Sonic, just like fucking Baldur's Gate 3. You guys, can we just for once in my lifetime, can for one time, the hot game that everyone's talking about, even people who don't traditionally play video games, can that game just for one fucking time in my life be a game that's like right up my alley, you know, like a Sonic the Hedgehog game? I noticed that oftentimes what people like, the things that make a game big, is like medieval or medieval adjacent style fantasy. So in Dragon's Dogma 2, you got that weird Japanese spin on that kind of medieval European fantasy shit. And then, you know, Hogwarts Legacy was a big deal, of course. Got a lot of that old medieval kind of influence with the castles and the owls and shit. And then, of course, Elden Ring, very medieval Europe fantasy inspired with some Japanese twists. And then, you know, maybe that's the thing, is take Japan, take medieval Europe, make them bang, or just be J.K. Rowling, I guess. But listen, Sonic one time did medieval fantasy. If you'll go back with me all the way to, I want to say March, maybe it was February, but March 2009, a little game by the name of Sonic in the Black Knight released exclusively for the Nintendo Wii, and unfortunately, that game is stranded on the Wii. Hashtag bring Sonic in the Black Knight to Xbox. And hey, that was Sonic's foray into medieval fantasy. The motherfucker ran around with a sword, for Christ's sake. What more could you ask for? I guess what I'm just saying, if Sonic wielding a sword and pretending to be King Arthur won't do it for you guys, what will? What will? I'm just simply here asking, what game that I can also get into can we just have pop off, you know, and be the hot shit, you know? I thought maybe Starfield was going to be that game last year. I was like, this is going to be like the first time in a long time that the game I'm all hyped about and I'm all playing day one and everything's good is going to be like the big game everyone's talking about. And it's going to feel real good to be in that like big conversation for once. And then Starfield came out and everyone's like, if you play Starfield, you're gay. I'm like, oh, okay, fuck me. So, Dragon's Dogma 2 is out, is the long and the short of that. Then Lightyear Frontier is out this week. This is mostly notable just because it's a day one Game Pass title. I don't really have any enthusiasm for it. Is this that one where it's like the chill space farming sim type? I just can't do it. Day one Game Pass game. There's some value for you. MLB The Show, another day one Game Pass game, is out as of the time we're recording this. So on Xbox One in Series X and S. Your annual MLB video game, one Sony exclusive turned multi-platform thanks to the Major League Baseball twisting the arms of Sony. So now we get to enjoy that game. Alone in the Dark 2024, so this complete reboot of Alone in the Dark, or this, is it a reboot or is it just a random sequel? I think it's a reboot, reimagining of the first game, is it not? Well, that's out now for PC and Xbox, and it's only available on current Xbox, not Xbox One. And that is out as of the day I'm recording this podcast, and apparently this one's not too hot. The reviews are pretty bad on this one, so I don't know. I don't know if that means the game's actually bad. I don't know if that means the game's just a good game buried in problems, but apparently it's repetitive. The combat's not too good. These are just some bullet points I saw repeated by quick takes online, but apparently it's not a very good game. It's a little glitchy and a little underbaked. So Alone in the Dark, some people have been waiting for this for a while, so maybe you say, I don't give a shit if it's good or not, I just care that it's here. And then for those people, I say, welcome to my world. That's me every time a Sonic game comes out. Final Fantasy XIV, how have we already mentioned Sonic like 3 times, 5 minutes in the show? Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn is available on Xbox. Now, it's been in some kind of preview form for a while now, a couple weeks, but it is officially properly released along with all of its DLC, expansions, and whatnot. And yeah, you can go ahead and play it as of the day this podcast goes live. So go run around, have your Final Fantasy. If I were on the brink of death and I knew about it, my Final Fantasy, I can assure you, my Final Fantasy would not be to run around riding an imaginary chicken-like creature called a chocobo, flirting with big titty anime girls. My Final Fantasy would probably be something like me and my cat chowing down on a pizza pie while Bob Iger gets on TV and announces that he's stepping down from the Walt Disney Company, but on his way out is bringing back original Epcot and Disney dollars and Disney Infinity. And that's my Final Fantasy. I don't know. And maybe Satya Nadella brings back Windows Phone all at the same time, you know? That'd be a nice fantasy. Anyway, couple others, 2 quick ones real quick. Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. Traditionally, I wouldn't include this, but I don't know where this puts us now because Call of Duty is an Xbox thing, and Xbox is all in the mobile, so I guess technically Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, even though it wasn't really developed with the assistance or the green lighting or the inclusion of Xbox or Xbox people to any extent whatsoever, it is technically now an Xbox-related burden to deal with. So, Call of Duty Warzone Mobile. Do you hate mobile gaming? Yes. Do you hate Battle Royale games that are taking over your favorite first-person shooters? Yes? Well, then, boy, have we got an app for you. Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, now available on iOS and Android. Let's just be proud that they got the fucking Android version out the same day as the iOS version, because that just doesn't ever fucking happen these days. But that's out now. And then lastly, we got kind of a flip from what we had at the top of the new game releases. So, Xbox gave PlayStation a game to play. Well, PlayStation's not giving Xbox a game to play, although I guess that's what MLB The Show 24 is. But a PlayStation game is now accessible on PC, which is a platform many Xbox users are familiar with, and that game is Horizon Forbidden West. This is the second Horizon game that came out. I think this game is now 2 years old. But it's on PC now. You play it via Steam. Are these Epic Game Store games as well? I don't know. I don't actually care. If you have Steam, you can go play Horizon Forbidden West on your PC. No need for a PlayStation 5 if you're like me and you just have some arbitrary need to hold out and to stick to one platform because you tell yourself, I'm not a fanboy. I just like the gaming better when I stick to one thing. I don't know. But yeah, that's out. So not only do we have tons of interesting, compelling games coming out this week, but wait till we get later in the news because if you're a Game Pass subscriber, and I suspect you are, shit's popping off over there. You got plenty of games. Cancel your plans. Tell your parents you don't have time to call them. Tell your little brother that you don't have time to mow his lawn, and tell your kids that to get their mother to drive them to school or something. I don't know, because you got lots of gaming coming up, but we'll get into that in a minute. Before we do get into all the news, let's start out with news, but mildly amusing stories, not largely amusing, not fairly amusing stories. We'll start with the mildly amusing stories. These are the updates, the small tidbits, things we can get a couple of paragraphs worth of dialogue out of, but not a whole. We're not going to hold. What do you want me to do? Want me to write a novel about Embracer being officially sold off to Saber Interactive or Saber Interactive going independent? All right. It's a tease for the first story. So this is a little bit of an update because last week the rumors were swirling, and right after the podcast went live, this did kind of hit and become official. But good news. Embracer has officially sold off Saber Interactive, the group which is home to Studios 3D Realms, Slipgate Ironworks, and more. They've been sold off for $247 million US. In an announcement to investors on Thursday last week, Embracer said that the sale meant it would now cease all operations in Russia while improving cash flow for Embracer. Saber is being sold off to a group of private investors under the name Beacon Interactive, a company controlled by Saber Interactive co-founder Matthew Karch. So basically, the Saber people started a private investor group so they could essentially buy back Saber from Embracer Group, which is basically best case scenario because last week the rumor was there was a private investment group that's going to buy Saber or some other entity is going to buy Saber and they will not go independent, but independent is the way that we would like to have seen them go. And kind of ended up being that it's like, well, yeah, it is private investors, which just so happen to be comprised of the leadership team at Saber. So that's great. So Saber's basically buying themselves back, going independent, and it's wonderful. So it's really exciting to see in that sense. According to Bloomberg, Beacon, the investment group, intends to exercise an option that was offered to acquire 4A Games, that's the developer behind the Metro series, and Zen Studios, that's the team behind the Zen pinball games, and would see a total value of the deal raised to $500 million with those acquisitions, tacked on. Saber will keep studios Nimble Giant, known for their Star Trek Infinite game, 3D Realms, known for Ion Fury. They're known for a lot of things, and they're working on right now. What is that game? It's an RTS game that looks so good, and I don't remember the name of it. They're also going to keep Sandbox Strategies, New World Interactive, that's the Insurgency guys, Slipgate Ironworks, Mad Head Games, and Fractured Byte That's the Borderlands Legendary Collection, so like a support team basically. So they're going to keep a lot of talent with them and get to go independent. So this is really good shit. Embracer will, however, retain. These are teams that were under Embracer or that were under Saber that are not going to stay with Saber and that are going to go back to Embracer. Mostly the non-Russian teams, and that is Tripwire, Beamdog, Tuxedo Labs, Demiurge, Shiver, Aspire, and they're the guys that just did the Star Wars Battlefront collection, and Snapshot Games, as well as 34 Big Thighs. How do you say that name? I don't even give a shit. But anyway, I just wanted to put this out there. It's positive news. It's nice that for a change, we're not going to be like, hey, so-and-so got laid off and slaughtered and on their way home from being laid off. It's like, hey, a bunch of video game creators got to go independent, which is English for independent, and go do their own thing. And this makes me happy to see. It's a little levity in a time period that's seemingly been just a little unusually dark. And so wanted to put that at the top of the show, not because there's a whole lot to say about it, but just because it's something exciting and it's something to celebrate, and it's something I just wanted to just start out the show with on good footing, right? What am I, the Grinch, going to start out the show telling you about who lost their job this week? No. We'll save that for a little bit later. All right, speaking of bad news, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, the game that it was announced a couple weeks ago that I was like, hey, that's exciting. That's like the one Star Wars thing I still like. Ended up coming out, and that's bad the way this happened, because the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, ported over by Aspire, has reportedly launched to a dog shit state, I would put it. From VGC, the game, which was released last week, has been met with widespread criticism on Reddit, Twitter, Steam page, everywhere. On Steam, as of the time of this article was written, the game is sitting at a 19% approval rating. Let's see if that's gone up at all, actually, because it's been almost a week since that was written. Okay, so it has gone from a 19% approval rating down to a 16% approval rating. That is. I mean, oh no, it's not 19. I read that wrong. Okay, I opened it up. It's still 19. Okay, pretty fucking bad. According to some players, when the game launched, some modes featured a maximum of 3 PC servers to accommodate the entire community, meaning that over 20,000 people were trying to get on the game on PC that launch night, and only about 192 people were able to get on in total, meaning that most people were just shit out of luck for those first few hours. Later, they did add additional server support later that day, on that launch day rather, but players continue to report bugs, stuttering, and some instances, weapons failing to register damage onto other players, etc., etc. The game was just a complete fucking mess. And Aspire's now posted updates on their official support page acknowledging this stuff, saying, "We'd like to thank the Battlefront community for their overwhelming support and feedback, blah, blah, blah. At launch, we experienced critical errors in our network infrastructure. The result was incredibly high ping, matchmaking errors, crashes, servers not appearing in the browser, and since then, we've been able to work to address these issues and increase network stability, although we will continue our efforts until our network infrastructure is stabilized to prevent further outages." So the game is basically just a hot fucking mess, and apparently a lot of the modes people were looking forward to are only available via local multiplayer, so not even everything's available online. And also apparently the game doesn't have cross-play support, so if your buddy picks it up on PC and you get it on Xbox, good luck not playing with each other, because that's probably what you'll be doing. So yeah, this is just, I don't know, man. I know it's like every YouTuber is making the video right now, and every think piece article on every website right now is talking about the same thing as pertains to this fiasco here. But as much of a broken record as I'm going to sound, it does need to be just repeatedly beaten over the head that, like, we cannot stand for this, man. We can't keep doing this. And the worst thing is, it's like the games that end up coming out the most fucked these days are always the cheap, easy cash grabs. Now, I don't partake in game development. I've never created a video game. I'm sure it's hard as shit. But it's pretty reasonable to assume that porting over or up-resing an old game, a 20-year-old game, onto modern hardware should, in theory, be much easier of an undertaking than, I don't know, developing a brand new $500 million AAA video game from the ground up over the course of 8 years. I understand there are different kind of quirks and obstacles to overcome in each instance. I'm sure with a lot of these ports, these things are underfunded or given short timelines or whatever the case may be, but it's just entirely unacceptable to allow for this shit to happen. Hey, we're going to take these beloved games from 20 years ago that you remember flawlessly, and we're going to fuck them up real bad, put them together, and try to sell them to you for $40. How does that sound, kids? And I don't know, man. Like, I was genuinely excited to play these games. I was going to try to add this into my rotation of games I'm currently playing because I was fairly excited to jump in and play this. And you guys know me. Usually I try not to listen too much to the way people are negatively responding. I mean, just look at Suicide Squad. I bought that game day one and played it anyway, knowing full well what the narrative was going into it, and made my own assessment on what the game was. But with this one, it's like, you know what, I'm pretty fucking busy with a bunch of other games right now, and maybe this game is as bad as people are saying, maybe it's not as bad as people are saying, but you know what I really don't feel like doing right now is blowing $35, $40, whatever it is, to go find out how fucked this game is. And on top of that, learning that the game's not crossplay was especially, you know, a kick in the ass, because I mean, everyone I play games with, all four people I play games with are on PlayStation or PC these days. So like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Play with myself? Nah, I don't need video games to do that. So, I don't know, man. Get your shit together. Aspire. You're now a free agent under the Saber Interactive banner. You're no longer with Embracer Group. I encourage you to spread your wings, find money and development time that's not there, and make these things right. You know, don't put these things out there unless you're ready to put them out there. Simple as that. The world was fine with and without these Star Wars games. So if you're going to put them out, just make sure they're ready to go, because no one has time for your bullshit. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my trite rant about half-baked games. Let's move on and talk about something a little more positive, something I'm just a little excited about for no reason, although maybe this is a little hypocritical for me to be excited about it. But we'll shut up. We'll get into it anyway. Marvel and Skydance New Media have unveiled Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra, the game being helmed by the director of Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, Amy Hennig. Revealed during an Unreal Engine showcase at GDC. So, by the way, guys, this week is GDC. You'll see a lot of GDC news pop up this week. The game stars Drew Moyerlin as Captain America and Carrie Payton as Black Panther. And the game will release at an unspecified time in 2025 for unspecified platforms. It's pretty safe to assume PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, at least those three. I'd feel pretty comfortable assuming. Quote, "In the chaos of war, worlds collide," the synopsis reads. Skydance New Media and Marvel Games share an original story where an ensemble of four heroes must overcome their differences and form an uneasy alliance to confront their common enemy, Hydra. So the story trailer for this game was released today, as of the time I'm recording this, and this was a surprise. This is something I didn't expect to see till probably Summer Game Fest, really. And the reason I said at the top, a little hypocritical, is because usually I'm that guy who's like, listen, man, if you're not going to show gameplay, I don't really give a shit about, you know, the trailer, because what the fuck is your game, you know? But this is one of those rare instances where it's like, okay, we know it's going to be some kind of narrative-driven action-adventure, third-person superhero game, you know? And I'm already down for that. And we already know the characters. We already know who Captain America is and Black Panther is. And we kind of have an idea what a AAA third-person action game where you play as Black Panther or Captain America might look like. So even though I would like to see gameplay, and even though I'm not going to get totally hyped for this game until I see gameplay, you know, if the first thing you're going to show me is a 2-minute cinematic story trailer, for something like this, I'm a little more open to being like, okay, you know, I'm not like over the moon hyped, but like you got my interest somewhat, versus like that Xbox game at the Partners Preview Showcase, you know, a few weeks back, where it was like some fucking goth girl walking down an alley, flipping cards around and being like, I'm going to put your face in a voodoo machine and turn you into goo. And then it's like, play our card battle game. I'm like, what the fuck does any of that mean? You know, it's like, I know what Black Panther and Captain America are. I don't know what Goo Monster Noir means. So whatever the fuck that card game was. So to me, it's like a little bit hypocritical. I know I'll take that on the chin. I understand how you could easily point to me like, Jesse, that's a double standard. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, listen, I'm not saying this game's going to be great. You know, I didn't like the last Marvel Avengers game that came out. So maybe this game is going to be a dud like that. Or maybe it's going to be just as good as the Uncharted games that came before, with Amy Hennig's previous work. But just knowing she's behind this, and kind of just the excitement, the promise of a new team. Skydance New Media, they're weird. They've come out of nowhere in the past like 10 years. They have a live action movie division. They have a animated movie division that's weirdly head up by a bunch of ex-Pixar people, and they've made a couple of movies already that are like, meh, not terrible, but not great either. I'm kind of curious about their output. These guys already have a VR team that's put out a couple of compelling VR games. They actually do those Walking Dead games for Oculus that are really well received, and now they got a full AAA team working with Amy Hennig, the mastermind behind the Uncharted trilogy, the original Uncharted trilogy. And she's making a freaking Marvel game, which looks awesome. I love a lot of what this game's doing. It's not trying to do that whole like, how can we tell you the story you're already fairly familiar with from the Marvel movies or the comics or whatever, and you just cram it into a video game for you. It's like, hey, let's tell a pretty interesting, unique story. I mean, I don't know if this draws from some comic story. Probably does, but if it does, I'm willing to bet you 99% of the people who interfaces this game will have never known about this comic series. So to most of us, including myself, this is going to be a very fresh and original story. But this World War II era, 1940s, Captain America fighting alongside Black Panther to stop this freaking Nazi freaking super soldier organization. That sounds pretty badass. And there's this one chick that's like a super secret spy from Wakanda. And then this other guy is like a U.S. military guy. And that's cool. And Tony Stark's dad's going to be in the game. Hopefully he's not playable because that would be weird. And then also you're asking yourself, well, how the hell is Black Panther in 1940s? It's not that Black Panther. It's Black Panther's grandfather. So it's not Black Panther or his dad that we saw die in one of the movies, but his dad. So Grandpa Black Panther. And anyway, whatever, I think the cinematic looks cool. Like the cinematic looks super high quality. The voice acting's good. I'm really, really pleased that they have some voice actors I'm not familiar with the names of because I'm getting fucking tired of being like, and it's voiced by Troy Baker. And so that's exciting just to see someone else get a job for once. And yeah, I don't know, man. I'm obviously, you wait till the game plays out, but I'm pretty intrigued by this. It's not some pre-existing team that I love being pulled away from a beloved franchise to be forced on Marvel duty, as is the case with like Insomniac or now with like Arcane or something like that, but rather just a brand new, entirely new team with some really notable veteran talent working on this really original, seemingly original Marvel story that should be pretty cool. So I'm actually pretty optimistic about this game. Looking forward to the inevitable gameplay trailer to see if the gameplay captures the excitement and the tone and the intrigue that the cinematic trailer, that the story trailer offered. So I don't know, man. Marvel's always reliable fun. I can be such a jaded asshole. I know. I'm sorry about it. When it comes to like the Star Wars and the Harry Potter stuff and all like the mega like surface level nerd culture stuff, but for some reason, Marvel's the one where I can just not be an asshole about it all the time and just be like, okay, it's fun. I get it, So this is me just being a piece of shit, hypocritical asshole and being like, well, it's Marvel, so it's kind of fun, right? And also, the characters don't look like spitting images of the MCU version, so there's not that uncanny valley approach. It looks like a different interpretation of these characters, which I also appreciate. So thankfully we got that. But anyway, there's not really much else to say. It's just a cinematic trailer. So that's Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra. Now, I will say, the title of this game, a little fucked. I feel like this is bad for they had to put Marvel at the front of this title of this game's name because no one in the history of forever, no fucking Marvel guy is gonna be like, I want to go play 1943 Rise of Hydra. Can you imagine just trying to find what's that new Marvel game, going on to Google and being like 1969? It's like getting a whole different search result. You're not gonna get the Rise of Hydra, you get the Rise of something else. So you gotta slap the Marvel name at the front of that to try and help. I think it's cool to have a name like 1943 Rise of Hydra, a name that doesn't necessarily shout out like superpowers, or like Spider-Man. But also, man, for SEO purposes, let's hope the Marvel brand can carry the rest of that title. All right, let's move on. Talk about Bungie for a little bit. So from VGC, Bungie's changed Marathon's game director, reportedly as part of a wider shakeup for the project's creative leadership. While Christopher Barrett was Marathon's game director when the sci-fi extraction shooter was announced last year, the Bungie veteran has since been replaced. Former Valorant game director Joe Ziegler who left Riot Games to join Bungie in 2022, has now stepped into the role. And according to IGN, Ziegler publicly announced his position as director shortly after the publication had caught wind of changes behind the scenes and approached the studio for comment. Quote, "For the last 9 months, I've been working on Marathon as game director," he said on X. We're still baking, but I'm excited to share with you more info when the game gets closer and closer, and bringing all of you into it. Sources told IGN that a number of changes have been made to Marathon under Ziegler's watch, including moving away from custom player characters to selecting a cast of heroes. Oh man, we're getting closer to Overwatch, aren't we? So, not much to say to this. Honestly, this could have been like a wrap-up story, but it just seems like there's more shake-up kind of fuckery behind the scenes stuff going on at Bungie. Just want to kind of draw attention to that, because while I love Bungie and I adore Bungie and I look to them as a golden standard of what a team can be in the games industry, they are also in a little bit of a downward spiral right now. I mean, for Christ's sake, they're doing a fucking Ghostbusters crossover for Destiny 2, and that's not a dig on Ghostbusters. That's just me saying, what the actual fuck? Like, how are we going to besmirch the good name of Destiny by doing some like kind of, I don't know, it's just such like lowbrow sloppy crap to like, it's like that's not Bungie's look. That's never been their MO to do that kind of shit. That's like literally every other live service does that kind of lowbrow shit. Like, that's not something's going on over there at Bungie. They need money. That's for fucking sure. They need money. So go get your Ghostbusters suction cup in the world of Destiny and go fly your Ghostbusters station wagon around in the world of Destiny. See how that works out. Anyway, still looking forward to Marathon. I hope it's great. All right, next up, let's talk about Persona 6. A game that's not properly been announced yet, but safe to assume it's in the works. From VGC, Persona 6 is being planned for Xbox platforms, according to a noted industry insider. Until recently, the Atlas RPG series had rarely been released on Xbox platforms, but before last year, when the 3 games in the Persona series were ported over to Xbox consoles, including Game Pass, it had only appeared on Xbox twice, with fighting games Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Arena Ultimax released in 2012 and 2014 respectively. Still waiting on that Persona 5, whatever that fighting one is. There's a strong case for refreshed interest in Atlas on Xbox then, and according to the industry insider Nate the Hate, the team is planning on releasing the next game in the series for Xbox. He says, quote, "From the information I've heard, it does seem that Persona 6 will be coming to Xbox. If not 100% sure, it will be day and date on PlayStation version. It will be day and date like the PlayStation version. But considering the way Persona games have been day and date on multiple platform releases at this point, it may be a safe assumption to make. So this would be big news. Getting Persona at all on Xbox was really big, exciting news for Xbox in recent years. But the way I've seen it is that like getting all this retroactive Final Fantasy content, all this retroactive Persona content and stuff has been like makeup work, kind of like a way to get your foot in the door, establish a relationship with these Japanese publishers, and kind of signal to your audience, hey, we're making the effort. We're going to try to get better about Japanese support and try to be more on parity with PlayStation when it comes to Japanese games. But now the next step, that's a great first step, getting things like Persona 3, Persona 4, Final Fantasy 14, etc. And not only getting these games, but in a lot of cases, getting these games on Game Pass. That's like really good stuff. But there is a next step in that process in signaling to your audience that like, hey, not only will we get these popular Japanese games, but we will get them in the same fashion as PlayStation. That next step is getting these new entries, not just old games ported over, but new entries in these series day and date alongside PlayStation, so that Xbox gamers can feel confident saying, yeah, I want to buy my Final Fantasy games or my Persona games or my Dragon Quest games on Xbox because I know I'll get the same game with the same content released at the same time as the PlayStation version and the Nintendo version, the PC version, because it's always Xbox that gets shafted with these Japanese games. And I understand why historically, but it is Xbox's job to fight for the opportunity to get this content on their platform and to maintain these relationships with these publishers. And it seems like that is the direction we're headed in, especially with Sega, which is the parent company of Atlas. It seems like they formed a really great relationship with Sega in recent years. And so for Persona 6 to inevitably be a game that comes to Xbox, not only at all, but alongside day and date with PlayStation 5 or 6 or whatever platform that game comes out on, that would be a really big move, a really good way to signal to your audience, like, hey, we're moving to the next step. And, maybe now we can expect these games to come to Xbox alongside the PlayStation version. And then hopefully they can do something about that exclusivity thing Sony's got fucking Square Enix locked into with these recent Final Fantasy games, because that shit's just annoying as hell. But hey, by the time we get there, maybe we won't have to worry about any of this at all, because Xbox will be no longer making consoles and we'll all be playing on PlayStation, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll all be happy and nothing will be wrong. All right, let's round out with one more. Speaking of Japanese role-playing games, we got a little bit of a sad one to round out with, but I did want to just pay my respects and read this here. As related by VGC, Matsumi Inomata, the illustrator known for her work on the Tales series of games by Bandai Namco, has sadly passed away at the age of 63. Inomata worked on 12 entries in the Tales series and was character designer on Tales games such as Tales of Visceria, Tales of Zestiria, Tales of Exilia 1 and 2, Tales of Graces F, Tales of Tempest, and Tales of Destiny 1 and 2. She also worked as character designer and animation director on numerous anime movies and series over the years. So, big name in the space. But I just want to give a shout out, pay respects, and just say, of course, thank you for your contributions to this industry. These games that influence people make, give us all the entertainment and the inspiration and the escape we all need. So it's always sad when you lose someone notable like that. But yeah, that's going to round us out for our opening news segments. Stories of mild amusement and whatnot. Next, we're going to get into all the big news. I'm telling you, we're going to talk about PlayStation hardware and Xbox hardware and what one suggests for the other and where we're going. We're going to get into all that. We're going to talk about all the shit going on Game Pass. Game Pass is as the kids say, is popping off. It's going nuts over there. But before we get into the main news, I want to talk to you about the games I've been playing this week. But before I can tell you about the games I've been playing this week, I got to fuel myself up. I got to tell you about how I've been fueling myself, what it is I've been eating. So guys, I know I'm not trying to make like a fucking meme out of this. I'm not trying to like build a online persona or a brand. Honestly, I think I just need to keep myself in check. I have been going to Taco Bell a little bit too much lately. I've been doing a pretty good job of staying away from the fast food and the soda and all the stuff. I've been pretty good, but lately, I'd say the past month or two, I've been bad with Taco Bell to where I'm probably averaging Taco Bell like once every once every 9 days on average. It's not good. So I need to reel it in a little bit, but that's going to be hard to do because Taco Bell just announced a new line of items that they're rolling out slowly week over week, but it's this new menu called the Cantina Menu. Now, I kind of rolled my eyes and didn't give a shit about this at first because they did these crispy cantina tacos like 2 years ago or something, and they were kind of shitty. They were like these new type of hard shell taco shells, different from the normal hard shell taco shells they did, and just had like melty cheese and then typical taco toppings, and it was like nothing to write home about, and they were expensive and they were kind of boring, and I was like, stick to everything else. Taco Bell makes better burritos, interesting items like the Crunchwrap Supreme and all that. Just don't worry about it. But this new Cantina menu shares nothing in common with the old menu, minus the name. The name is the same, but the items are all different. And last week, they launched the first two items. They have a burrito, a taco bowl, and all this other stuff on the way in the coming days. But so far, what they released is the new Cantina. It's like Cantina Street Taco or something like that. And then the Cantina Quesadilla. And the only reason I tried these was because there's one day I woke up and I was just really feeling like shit and didn't want to get out of bed. And so I overslept and missed my opportunity to like make coffee and make a sandwich to bring to work and everything. So I was at work and I was like, man, I'm hungry. And I definitely didn't bring anything to work today. I'm going to be a bitch, go across the street and get some Taco Bell. And I did. And I said, might as well try the new thing while I'm here. Why not? And so I tried the new quesadilla, the new taco, the Cantina style taco. You guys, I don't say this lightly. And I've been critical of Taco Bell when the time's called for it, but I mean this with full sincerity. The new Cantina menu, so far at least, is the best thing Taco Bell has done in years. Like, I mean years. Like, they've done some recent things that are like, oh yeah, that's okay, or like that's pretty good, here or there. Like, I'm a big fan of their new value menu. I thought it was a pretty good overhaul of the value menu, and they've had some one-off things here or there where they do like the crispy chicken taco thing, where it's like a fried chicken tender taco and stuff like that. It's been fun little one-offs here or there. But this is on a fucking nother level. So first of all, these new tacos, quesadillas, they melt cheese on the outside of them too. So kind of like the grilled cheese burrito. That's a beautiful staple. In fact, I'd say these are the best menu items since the grilled cheese burrito came out back in 2020. That's what I would say. And they're amazing. This is, I don't really know how to put this into words, but this is Taco Bell kind of trying to go for more of a like contemporary, like fast casual, hip style, more like higher end kind of Tex-Mex establishment food type deal. So not like not like the same menu items you would find at like I don't know how to fucking put this, man. It's hard to put into words. Like kind of like here we have a place called Tijuana Flats. That's a big one that people like a lot. One of those places where it's still cheap, it's still trashy white people gringo Tex-Mex Mexican food, but it's a little more pricey, a little more nice. It's not seen as low quality, at least perception wise, as like the quality you get from a Taco Bell. That's kind of what this feels like. They're trying to go for like that like Chipotle level of like quality and appeal with this menu. You know, I'm not saying the ingredients are so superior. I'm not saying it's nice high-end food or anything like that. I'm saying you can tell that with these menu items, they're targeting that. And you can tell because they're doing things like the quesadilla in particular was phenomenal. It tastes like a fucking birria quesadilla. It's got like shredded chicken in there and like tons of different cheese blends and stuff. And then it comes with a side of guacamole and it comes with a side of sour cream to dip it in. And then all of the Cantina taco items or menu items also come with they call it avocado verde salsa. It's a special sauce that's in a packet like all their other sauces, but they give it to you over the counter because it has to be refrigerated and kept cold. And what it essentially is just, if you ever had it, avocado crema. It's like a typical Mexican sauce you get at a lot of like Mexican restaurants. It's an avocado crema sauce. It's phenomenal. It's really good. It's a great crema sauce. But of course, because they're Taco Bell and they got to cater to the Taco Bell kind of nomenclature, they got to call it the new avocado verde salsa packet, which is just I don't know. I don't know why they got to call it that. It's a verde. It's a avocado crema, but it's so fucking good. And you'll pour that shit all over your quesadilla, all over your taco. And the problem is the quesadilla was so good with the sour cream. It was so good with the avocado or the guacamole. And it was so good with the crema salsa that I was like constantly switching between the three. I was like, this is good no matter how you eat it. And it was good by its own. It didn't even need sauce. It was great on its own. And this shit is it's just so good. It's a new type of shredded chicken that's phenomenal. And it's that chipotle sauce that they used to put in a lot of value menu items that you don't see that much anymore. And then it's a 3 cheese blend on the inside and the outside. And it's just fucking sublime. It is by far the best thing Taco Bell has put out in a long time. The crispy taco, very good. The quesadilla, even better. And this week they're coming out with a burrito version of the Cantina menu, a rice bowl, and a soft taco. So I already had the hard taco. Now they're gonna have a soft taco, and it looks like the soft taco has like a different kind of lettuce blend with like red cabbage and stuff in it. So they're trying to get a little, like a little like white people fancy. You ever see like the Instagram? What's it called? Like middle class fancy or white people fancy, where it's like, it's not nice, it's not high end food, but it's like they're trying to bump their appearance up from like the Taco Bell quality to maybe like a Chipotle level of quality or like a Tijuana Flats level of quality. And it's fucking working for me. It still feels authentically Taco Bell while also definitely being a notch up. And I'm really into the sauces. I'm really into the quesadilla. So I just want a big old shout out to Taco Bell and the new Cantina menu. I'm definitely going to go back there and get that quesadilla again. I'm definitely going to go back and give the burrito a try. If that's out now, I'll have to get that probably this weekend. But that burrito, I want to give that a try for sure. And just props where due, man. Like everyone's always bitching in the Taco Bell fan community about, they took this away, or it's been 20 years and they still haven't brought this back. And listen, I'm there with you. I miss the double XL stuffed burritos. I miss the caramel apple empanadas and all the rest. I'm with you guys. I'll stand with you in solidarity. But we also sometimes got to look forward to the future and appreciate where we are now and what we have now. And what we have now is this new Cantina menu, and it is fucking great. So shout out to Taco Bell. I say this with full confidence. Easily the best things they've added to the menu in at least the past 4 years. That's not small stuff coming from a man who eats Taco Bell almost every 9 days, okay? So think about that next time you're waiting in the drive-thru. All right, that's it for what I've been eating, you guys. Let's move on to what I've been playing. And surprise, surprise, nothing really too exciting to say here because I am still just absolutely sucked into Wasteland 3. Now, I kind of stalled a little bit just because it was my girlfriend's birthday this past week, so weekend or Tuesday, so we did like a little special thing. We took a couple days off work, burned a couple vacation days to just, stay in the area and just kind of do a couple things, like go to the science museum and explore town and just kind of spend some time together. So I tried to be a good boyfriend and spend time with her and not play video games. So it was, it's just one of those things. It's like, I'm free, I'm off work. I hypothetically could be playing video games, but I'm trying to be a good boyfriend. So we just spent time together, and I didn't really play too many video games. That being said, I am pretty far along Wasteland 3. I'm at about the 30-hour mark. I can feel I'm getting close to the end of the game. And so I'm going to try and wrap this up in the next week. Not because I'm not enjoying it, but because there's like 7 things I'm in the middle of and like 7 things coming out that I want to start on. And I know if I don't wrap up Wasteland 3, a bunch of things are going to give. And so I'm going to try to, I feel like, if I get to 40 hours, 45 hours, I'll be at a good place where I feel like I've seen enough and done enough. I'm ready to roll the credits. But I just got to say still, like, I'm not really going to get in depth until I beat the game and give it one last little hurrah. But Wasteland 3, easily, without a doubt, hands down, so far, my game of the year. And I know it's like, Jesse, we're 3 months of the year, calm the fuck down. But my game of the year, hands down, and I will be fucking shocked. Unless Avowed ends up being everything I could ever want it to be and more, I don't see how any game this year is going to beat Wasteland 3 for me. That's how much I love this game. So I love that. Also been playing a little bit of Fortnite. I was hanging out with a buddy last week, and he for some reason is in a Fortnite kick and kept talking about Fortnite, and that for some reason sparked for me to get back on Fortnite. And now my girlfriend's trying Fortnite for the first time, so I think she's about to put Sea of Thieves down and jump into Fortnite, which I don't know if I'm ready for that. The Sea of Thieves was cute, the Call of Duty was fun, but I don't know if I'm ready for the version of her that's into Fortnite. So we'll have to see if that's something I can tolerate. And then such a dick. And then the last game I've been dabbling in a little bit, just nights, when I'm laying in bed, nodding off, just watching hockey on Hulu and playing my little Logitech Cloud thing, playing like 20 minutes here or there of Hot Wheels Unleashed. Just because sometimes when you don't have children and you're almost 30 years old and, you like to play Hot Wheels because you're a fucking weirdo and that's what you like. And I don't have an excuse for it, guys. Hot Wheels Unleashed is a good game. And I like Hot Wheels. I'm wearing a Hot Wheels shirt right now as I record the podcast. That is not planned. That is because I shit you not. This is not a joke. I'd wager that 50% of the shirts I own are Hot Wheels shirts. I don't know why. I just have a lot of Hot Wheels t-shirts, and I like Hot Wheels a lot after all these years. Tim R. writes in and says, I get that some people think isometric view in video games is a budget choice, but I think it's more of a design choice, and I'm quite fond of it for the right games. Tim R., this is it's a poignant thing to say, and maybe, I don't know if this was sparked because I was talking about the isometric thing last week when talking about Wasteland 3, or maybe it was something else. But, yeah, so the isometric thing is a tough one because I finally really know what it's. I've played isometric games that have really sucked me in. Some Zelda games in the past. I love twin stick shooters. Many great twin stick shooters that are, of course, isometric, top down style games. But the thing about it is, it's one of those things where, of course, the reason why this view was conceived and the reason why it was popularized, especially in older generations, is because it's twofold: budget and power limitations. Back in the day, you couldn't make a fucking giant 3D action adventuring open world. You couldn't make Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Game Boy, but you could make Link to the Past, And so that's how we got like the isometric view. It's budget friendly, of course, but it's also within the power confines of what video game hardware could do back in the day when the viewpoint was kind of created and popularized. So you get it from that point of view. And yeah, there are a lot of particularly PC style games that are isometric and things like that. But in some cases, it's kind of a necessary viewpoint. Like in real-time strategy games, it's kind of like the de facto perspective to play in. There are plenty of real-time strategy games that do have a third-person perspective, but really the isometric top-down view is kind of the superior way to play them. And what I've definitely learned playing Wasteland 3 is, and I knew this experience was true for a lot of people out there across many types of games, but I never just had a personal experience like this really until Wasteland 3. But like, I found a game where I have played the 3D camera behind the character perspective version of a game like this, you know, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, whatever. But in the case of Wasteland 3, it's not just like a budget conscious reason to go with a perspective like this, but it also has like intense ramifications on how the game feels and how you experience this world. Like, because this game has a little bit more of a top-down view, it feels like it's more about controlling my party through an environment than it is about exploring a map as one character. And if, you know, the limitations I talked about last week, where it's like, it's cute how, like, you know, when you're looking at top-down view and everyone's like kind of a rough character model, you don't see everyone's facial animations and all the you know, intricacies of like how someone's body language is conveying additional information in a game. You don't get that. So the game supplements it or you know, kind of helps you out by in addition to dialogue, giving you a bunch of like little text-based kind of things, like you approach an NPC in the game, and you know, a little text will pop up because you can't see the character's face well, and it'll be like the character looks up at you and grunts as it sees you walking towards them. They look to their sides and notice no one else is around, and they motion you towards them and stuff like that. It's got like that text-based adventure kind of shit that, like, to me, I feel like just adds a lot of like, it adds a lot of immersion into the world building. It's like reading a deep, you know, rich, deeply detailed and fleshed out novel, as opposed to just like watching a cool movie, you know, and having to take it all in visually. Like, having to take in the world building and the characters and the communication all through like deep, rich writing sometimes is so much more, not always, but in some cases can be more engaging and more captivating than just like, wow, look at that visual landscape. And I feel like the isometric view style kind of lends itself to that method of storytelling. And so, yeah, I mean, it definitely started as a budget choice and a power limitation of the hardware that was available at the time. But I'm with you, man. Something I'm growing fond of it as well. And, you know, like, I remember, what is that, Rock and Roll Racers on Super Nintendo back in the day. There are plenty of games that have an isometric point of view that I don't think are best suited for that point of view, like racing games. But there are some games where it really works well, like real-time strategy games or God Sim games, or like fucking Diablo, like dungeon crawlers like Diablo, and stuff like Wasteland. So I'm with you. When you find the perfect game to pair that kind of viewpoint with, you got some fucking magic there. And what I've experienced with Wasteland 3 in recent weeks is pure magic. And Tim R., I'm glad you have the ability to see the magic and the majesty, not magic, but the majesty behind the viewpoint. The problem is, of course, inevitably why we move away from this more and more, and as budgets grow and teams grow bigger and have the ability to grow out of doing games like this and to do bigger, more AAA, more traditional style camera perspectives. The reason why people move away from isometric is because it's just harder to market. And like, I gotta be honest, I look at a game like Wasteland 3, and if I've never played it, I'd be like, yeah, that doesn't look as exciting as a game like Starfield, where you get to see, oh, it's in first person, it's in third person, it's this big open AAA polished up open world RPG. One looks a lot flashier than the other, you know, sometimes that flashy, sexy looking game ends up being a fast food cheeseburger, and it ends up being like, oh, okay, this is kind of good, but I feel a little sick after eating it. But sometimes that thing that looked like a pile of brown rice and grilled chicken and other boring adult vegetables ends up being this beautiful concoction of culinary arts that makes your mouth sing when you bite in. And that, in the case of Wasteland 3, that's it. It might look like broccoli and rice from a distance, but you bite into that motherfucker and you would think that Beethoven's doing a whole goddamn symphony in your mouth. So isometric viewpoints, I think there's a place and a time. I think you deserve a seat at the table, and I think you should probably go to Taco Bell and get that new Cantina quesadilla. So that's it for what I've been playing, you guys. Let's take a quick break here, get into the main news, talk about what the fuck's going on Game Pass, because there's way too many games to look forward to. And yeah, we'll be right back. All right, so let's just jump right into this news about Xbox dev kits for new hardware going out, and then PlayStation 5 Pro basically leaking all the specs for the console, and then try to push that all together and have a broader conversation with all that in mind. So starting with the Xbox half from VGC, a new Xbox development kit has reportedly been certified in South Korea. As spotted by Xbox News for Koreans, it's a Twitter account, the dev kit was approved this week for use by South Korea's National Radio Research Agency. Manufactured in China and Vietnam, it carries the model number 2089. The Xbox Series X dev kit, which was model number 1881, was certified by the agency 5 months before the console launched in November of 2020. So if this model number is going to launch sometime this year, you could assume 5 months or so from now, from around the same time it was approved. It's a little soon. It's late summer, early fall-ish. So that'd be a little soon, but just put that, out there. We can talk about that in a second. And then let's talk about the PlayStation news. So in contrast, and this is much, a little deeper, but we'll try to read it broad. From VGC, as well as IGN, Insider Gaming, and Moore's Law is Dead, which is a YouTuber. The apparent specs for the as yet unannounced PlayStation 5 Pro console has been shared online. Documentation explaining the console specifications was initially leaked by YouTuber Moore's Law is Dead, before being detailed by Inside Gaming, then verified by IGN, which says the document comes from Sony Interactive Entertainment's development network. The specs suggest that the PlayStation 5 Pro has a CPU that is identical to that of the standard PlayStation 5, but the new console will also have a high CPU frequency mode, which increases CPU by 10% to 3.85 gigahertz. But reduces GPU performance by around 1% as a result. The GPU itself is powered by a 33.5 teraflop versus the PS5's 10.28 teraflop, but this doesn't mean that it'll be more than 3 times as powerful. As noted by The Verge, changes in AMD's architecture means it's difficult to directly compare teraflops between PS5 and PS5 Pro, and that in reality the comparison's more like 10.28 versus 17 teraflops. Indeed, the documentation leaked by Moore's Law is Dead suggests rendering roughly 45% faster. The console's apparent upscaling and anti-aliasing features are also listed in the specs, named PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR. It's believed that it could be a proprietary DLSS type solution that was discussed last year by Giant Bomb reporter Jeff Grubb, which would basically allow the machine to take a 1080p resolution and upscale it to 4K automatically. So similar to how the Xbox Series X and Microsoft have been able to take old Xbox 360 games and push them to go and run at 4K, they'd be able to maybe do a similar type of thing here. So let's talk about this. So PS5 Pro specs are coming out. It looks like the console is, a little bit more powerful. The CPU is kind of clocked higher. The upgraded GPU will allow it to render about 45% faster. They'll have some kind of DLSS type technology proprietary for the device that'll allow them to upscale games and make them look nicer and get more 4K support out of the box. So I don't know. To me, I assume what this box is the PS5 is the console that can do 30 FPS 4K or 60 FPS 1080p or sometimes even a little higher. Just like the Xbox Series X does a similar thing. But this box might be the box designed to allow you to do 60 FPS and 4K more often. And that is what I assume we're getting at here. The thing is, in some ways, this console is being touted. You see the way people are reacting to it, the way a lot of sites are writing this up and stuff. People are acting like this is a substantial fucking leap in power. And I think people are getting hung up because that 33 teraflops to the current 10 teraflops sounds like a massive jump. But if Xbox has taught me anything in the past, fucking 5-7 years or so, it's that teraflops is a fucking buzz term that I'm sure means something to someone with a brain, but to me means games look a little bit better. Because jumping from my Xbox One to my Xbox Series X, while I believe the Series X is... Ooh, sorry, I had to stop for a second. A wasp just flew on me. I don't know how that thing got in here, but all right, back to business. What was I talking about? Yeah, so I think the Xbox... The thing is, the jump from my Xbox One to my Xbox Series X was even more underwhelming than my jump from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. And I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something, or there's something I have to lie to myself about this to try and not seem like an idiot. There's something clearly that I'm missing. And listen, I'm not that stupid. When I was playing Titanfall 1 on my Xbox One, I was like, yeah, this looks a lot nicer than games looked on my Xbox 360. And when I first got my Xbox Series X and I plugged it up, and I didn't have an Xbox One X. I jumped from a day one Xbox One to an Xbox Series X. And when I jumped into Destiny 2 for the first time, because there were no really cool launch games, I had to play an old game. When I jumped into Destiny 2 on my Xbox Series X on day one, I was like, hey, Destiny looks fucking beautiful. Like, this looks way prettier than it looked on my Xbox One. It loads faster. The menus are obviously snappy and nice and fast and everything. Like, I noticed differences, but I don't know. It felt like, yeah, this is suitable. It was time for an upgrade, because I know over the next 5 to 10 years, I will need a console to be this powerful in order to handle the games that are coming. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, I really needed this power boost. And the thing is, I really struggled to feel like, I don't know, if the jump from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One was so, like, whelming. I wouldn't say underwhelming, I would say whelming. It was just not as impressive as the jump from the Xbox to the Xbox 360, or like the N64 to the Xbox or something like that, And I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if the jump from a modern, a console generation to the next is so whelming as it is, I just don't feel like we truly need, like, these mid-console refreshes as much. And it seems like that's kind of what PS5 Pro will be. It will be very much in the vein of PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, where it's like, like, for the most hardcore fans that absolutely have the disposable income, that there's no reason why you should. I get it. It's nice to have. You can have something a little more powerful. Why not? More power to you if that's how you want to spend your money. But I don't know. It just doesn't sound all that impressive. And that kind of puts us in a situation where I feel like Xbox has to respond only to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, or only to keep up optically, because one thing that changed a lot this generation that wasn't as relevant last time when we had an Xbox One X and an Xbox or a PS4 Pro was that last generation was really the last time where it kind of felt quote unquote normal, in the sense of like, yeah, it's this generation, then we'll have another one, and then we'll do a hard stop and do another one, because with this generation, we really entered in this fully envisioned, fully realized future where console gaming is very PC-like. Like, my PS5 is basically an extension of my PS4. My Xbox Series X is just a continuation of what I did on Xbox One. And it's not really so much that, like, Xbox One games are backwards compatible with Xbox Series X. It's just that Xbox is Xbox, and so of course my Xbox One games work on my Xbox, just like my Xbox Series X games work on my Xbox. Very much in the PC sense of, like, yeah, before I upgraded my graphics card, I couldn't play this game, but now I can because I upgraded my graphics card. But it's still all just PC. It's still all the same library of games. And the reason I bring that up is just to say, I feel like reaching that point in the market and in the console space, where that's kind of where we are with consoles, I feel like it's kind of more useless than ever before to have these mid-console refreshes. Here's another, I actually think this is a pretty apt example. Remember how in the earlier days of iPhone, it was like the iPhone 3, the iPhone 3GS, the iPhone 4, the iPhone 4S, the iPhone 5, the iPhone 5S. And forever it was always this ping pong of like generation, iteration, back and forth, like 2-year cycles. And then at one point, Apple just realized, like, hey, this is kind of fucking stupid. Why do we do this? The leaps, we're at that diminishing returns point where, like, the revolutionary jumps in power and capability and feature set of every year's iPhone has diminished to such a small amount to where it's like, whatever, who gives a shit? What does it matter if it's an S or a full-blown jump in number? So now every iPhone is 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, it's just numbers. Samsung does the same thing. There's no such thing as like a S Plus or something like that. It's just, the S Ultra 22, 23, 24. It's like, this is this year's model. And I feel like that's kind of where we are in console gaming. We don't need to go from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 3 Plus, PlayStation 4 Plus, something like that. It's like, just do the next fucking number. And I feel like it's hard because it's really more about breaking the conventions and the tradition than anything. But like, why can't we? It's easy to talk about the example of PlayStation because PlayStation has such a clean numbering system, PlayStation 1 through 5, right? Xbox is a little more confusing because every generation just gets a completely different naming convention. But why can't these guys just kind of break the convention and do their own fucking thing? Like, instead of making a PS5 Pro, why don't you just make a new PlayStation? It's the PlayStation 6. Doesn't fucking matter. It's the PlayStation 7. Here's the PlayStation 8. Here's the PlayStation 9. Maybe the jump from PS8 to PS9 was more notable than the jump from PS7 to PS8. But who cares? Sometimes, iPhone 11 to 12 was a bigger jump than iPhone 12 to 13, but it's still just another fucking number. Who cares? You just jump on when you want, because at the end of the day, it's the same library, it's the same accounts, the same everything that transfers over to the next box. And I feel like that's kind of where we're getting. I'm not trying to give Xbox like a lazy way out for why they don't have an Xbox Series X Pro edition or whatever on the way. We don't know. I mean, the South Korean ratings board, or whatever this board is approving this new piece of hardware, or processing this new device, which could very well be this slimmed Xbox Series X that we heard rumors about, that we saw leaks about. That model where it's like all circular. I forget the code name for it, where it's all circular and it doesn't have a disk drive. It's all digital, but it's basically just an Xbox Series X, but smaller and without a disk drive. It could be that. What was that? The Project Brooklyn? It could be that. It could be, maybe it is an Xbox Series X Pro edition. Maybe they did change their mind about 6 months ago and they said, no, we got to do a mid-cycle refresh. But then the other kind of caveat to that is, like, from what we understand, and of course nothing's set in stone right now, but from what we understand, apparently the way it's going is that Xbox is going to try to beat PlayStation to the punch. They're going to try to recreate a 2005 Xbox 360 type scenario where maybe they can get some ground over Sony if they release the next generation of Xbox a full year early. PS3 came out in 06 and Xbox 360 came out in 05. And, as history tells, that extra year had a huge, profound impact on why Xbox 360 was so popular, because it had a whole year on market before PlayStation 3 did. So it was able to say, like, hey, you want the new flashy next generation hardware? It's here, baby. Don't wait around another year for PlayStation. We're right here. Xbox 360. Let's go. And so, the rumor is that Xbox is planning to do something like that. So we might get the whole ass next generation of Xbox as early as 2026, just 2 years from now. That means literally, like, 2 years from this moment, we could be sitting here having a conversation of how we're just a few months away from the Xbox Generation 9, whatever the fuck they decide to call it. And, that could very well be a thing. And if that's the case, then it's like, well, then why do a mid-generation refresh? What, you're going to release the Series S and X in 2020, and then in 2024 do a mid-cycle refresh, and then like 18 months later put out a new box or announce a new box? Like, that sounds kind of silly. So, like, why even bother doing that? But I don't know. I feel like that just kind of leads back to my iPhone analogy altogether, where it's like, I just feel like we're at that point. The controller doesn't change all that much. Maybe sometimes the controller gets a little prettier. Maybe sometimes the box gets a little more slick. And sometimes the next model looks a little more impressive than the last model. But for the most part, now that we're not in this weird world where, like, think about like Nintendo traditionally. It's like, you can't just fucking put a Super Nintendo game into a GameCube or something like that. It's all apples and oranges. It's different languages, basically. They can't communicate with one another. But we're not in that time period anymore. We're in the time period where, Nintendo's always a bad example because they do whatever the fuck they want, but you assume the next thing that they release next year, their new hardware, is going to basically just be a continuation of Nintendo Switch. It will probably just be a new thing that carries all your Nintendo Switch shit forward and has full backwards compatibility and is much more like a PC type ecosystem for Nintendo, as opposed to like, hey, we reinvented the wheel again and now the cartridges are octagons, and I can't speak. The cartridges are octagons and the fucking the hexagons are controllers now, and I don't know what I'm saying, because Nintendo, I don't know, that's a bad example. But again, going back to PlayStation, Xbox, it's just like I'm not expecting the discs that games come on to turn into cartridges. It's like, oh, now I need to keep my PS5 around because the PS6 takes cartridges, so I need a PS5 so I can play my old PS5 and PS4 games on that. It's like we're not gonna have that problem again. We're past that. And you're not going to have that jump in power like you had from PS2 to PS3, or like Xbox 360 to Xbox One, or like, Xbox 360. We're like, mind blown. Wireless controllers, high definition graphics, always online style games and gameplay, and friends lists and dashboards. Remember, there was a time when we used to play video games where you'd boot up the console and it would just run straight into whatever video games plugged into it. And there was no dashboard, there was no menu or any of that shit. It's like we're past all those what seem very, pedestrian, rudimentary, kind of basic generations now, and we're into a more mature market where the system just kind of is what it is. It's a mature market, and the consoles are really just kind of iterative. They're not really revolutionary when they come out. So I don't know, man. It's such like a rock and a hard place, because with Xbox, it's like damned if I do, damned if I don't, right? If they don't put out a pro console, they look like shit compared to PlayStation. If they do put out a pro console, that's how they keep up with the competition, say, well, we have a competing option as well. But if they're going to jump the gun on the next generation, now they're just kind of having new hardware compete with new hardware. But it doesn't matter what they fucking do, because their hardware is getting eaten by PlayStation every day of the week. Doesn't matter what game they put out, what they do with the hardware, what price point it's at. People just buy PlayStation 5 anyway. And then on top of that, it's like, this might all be moot because Xbox just started putting some older titles on PlayStation. They're pre-ordering and selling like crack. So, I don't know, maybe in 12 months, the conversation we're having is cancel all the Xboxes. We're just going to put all this shit on PlayStation. Halo Infinite is coming to PlayStation. Give up. Game over. Like, that's the other thing, is there's so many. I feel like Xbox is at such an inflection point as a business that, like, sure, we can talk the hypotheticals about what they should do, but it's always going to be based on scenario A, B, and C. And then there's always the possibility for a whole new scenario we didn't see coming, because that's just what it is to be an Xbox fan at this point in time, right? It's like, all right, I think I know what's going on with Xbox. I follow the news enough. I listen to enough podcasts. I listen to enough YouTube to understand that based on everything that's going on, Xbox is either going to do A or B. And then Phil Spencer busts down and goes, fuck you, motherfucker, we're doing option D. And you're like, I didn't even know there was a D option. He's like, oh, there's an option for D's nuts. And then he teabags you and hits you with the whole, fuck you, Xbox is coming to Ouya. And Ouya is coming back from the dead. Microsoft bottom. Now they're making Ouyas again, because that's just, I don't know. It is simultaneously more fun than ever to talk about Xbox, and more frustrating than ever, because it's like, I based on this, and this, I think this is what's happening. And then just out of left field, there you go. I don't know. That's kind of my 2 cents about it. You can't really be coherent when trying to figure out what the next step is for Xbox, in not only what they should do, but what they will do, because it's just so schizophrenic. It's just so, and I feel like what that really comes down to, as just consumers trying to feed off of the news, is really just, it all starts from the top, where there's this corporate tug and pull between the team at Xbox and the team at Microsoft. And of course, the team at Microsoft has the bigger stick. And then they do the tug and pull, which is constantly flip-flopping and changing the way that the Xbox brand behaves and the decisions they make and the things they say and do. And then Xbox is always way too trigger happy with just saying everything all the time, talking to their audience, being a little bit too communicative. And then, we get the media cycle of like, Xbox is doing this, now they're doing this, now they're backtracking on this, now they're apologizing for this, but they're also doing that. And they said they wouldn't do this, but they're kind of doing that, even though they said they wouldn't do this. But hey, at least they're doing that. And that's kind of like the cycle of Xbox right now. It's exciting. There's always something new to think about. There's always something new to consume, but it makes no goddamn sense. So I don't know. I'm kind of, if the Xbox brand was curated or catered to in a way that it was specifically designed with me and only me in mind, like the entire gaming community was just had my exact preferences and tastes and opinions, and manufacturers and publishers and everything knew that, and they were targeting specifically me and what I want, it'd be pretty fucking simple. It's like, I think the jump the gun approach for next generation is a good idea. I think you skip out on an Xbox Series X version X, because even though the 75 hardest core Xbox Twitter boys all love the Xbox One X, the truth of the matter is basically no one bought one. It wasn't that big a deal. It didn't really move the needle in any meaningful way. It was more of an optics thing. And so I say you skip that. It's kind of not needed. You do try to beat Sony to the punch with the next generation. So you do the Xbox for the sake of keeping things easy. Let's say right now we're on generation 4 of Xbox. You do Xbox generation number 5 a year or two, about a year to a year and a half before Sony does PlayStation 6. So you can kind of beat them to the jump on that. And then with that, you try to build as much momentum as you possibly can those 12 months, saying like, listen, man, I know you guys have a fucking undying boner for PlayStation. You love PlayStation, but what if we told you the next generation of gaming hardware is here? It's 12 months earlier if you're on Team Xbox. Also, we have a Nintendo Switch type Xbox that's like $299, and it's here today. You don't have to wait a year for it. Also, we have a super powerful version of the next generation of Xbox. It's $600, but it's more than 3 times powerful than the Xbox Series X. Plus, it has a disc drive for all you fucking physical game nerds. So there's that. And then it's like, okay, well, shit. And maybe they come out the gate swinging, like they hold all their really good shit for this box. They're like, listen, we got Gear 6, we got Halo Infinite 2, less Infinite, more Halo, and they got like all this. Obviously, I'm getting real hypothetical here. But you have like this cacophony of like really compelling shit to come out the gate with. You beat PlayStation by a year with the new hardware. You have budgets, you have hardware options that meet all kinds of budgets, and you have compelling, great first-party support. The only thing Xbox Series X was really missing out the gate, really compelling first-party support. I think that's a recipe. When you're the only guy that has that, Nintendo's console is a year old by that point. PlayStation's next console is another 2 years out. When you're the only guy in the next generation and you have compelling games to go with it and a great array of price points to jump in at, I think that's a really good way to earn, if there's any prayer of a chance of gaining market share, that's the approach to me. That's the only way. And if that doesn't work, then truly, I feel like I've given Xbox this out so many times, but truly, if that does not work, you never will ever have any prayer of a fucking chance. I'm not talking about beating PlayStation or hardware sales. I'm talking about just getting more competitive with them. Just get, instead of it being like PlayStation's outselling Xbox 3-1, I'm just talking about maybe PlayStation has 80 million units sold and Xbox has 65 million units sold. Something like that. Something where it's a little more even, But I don't know. Cronky actually has a really good question. I'm actually going to scroll to the end of the show and pull this question so we can talk about it now, because I actually think it kind of ties into where I'm headed. I could stop right here, or we can expand it into this, and I think we should expand into this question and then end the conversation on this, where we just talk about, because this is the real thing at the end of the day, where it's hard, because if there's one thing I've learned, and this is going to sound real hoity-toity, but when you listen to political debates or philosophical debates or any just kind of scholarly debate, one of the most important foundational things you do in a debate, or just in terms of trying to go with deep analysis, is you have to define the things you're looking for so that the audience understands in what context the speaker is talking. So let's try to find this, because one of the biggest issues with Xbox is people will so flippantly say Xbox is failing, and then an Xbox fan will say, no, Xbox is thriving, because the guy who says Xbox is failing is looking at how badly PlayStation's outselling Xbox. But the guy that says Xbox is thriving is just looking at Microsoft's recent quarterly earnings report, seeing the revenue that the Xbox division posted. And both people are kind of right. And so we need to kind of define things first and foremost, right? Xbox as a brand is profitable. Xbox as a brand is a business worth pursuing. If you were a company that is not the Microsoft Corporation and you owned the Xbox brand, you'd probably be pretty fucking happy that you own that brand and that it's making you the money it's making you, with or without Game Pass, honestly, because to have a console that is being outsold by PlayStation as much as Xbox is, they're still making fucking money off people buying shit from the store, off people buying Xbox games. They're still making money off people microtransacting the fuck out of Fortnite and buying Xbox Design Lab controllers and all the rest. So Xbox is a profitable, great business, and 99% of people would be fucking over the moon to be the owner of a business like Xbox. The problem is, when you are the son of Microsoft, good enough is not good enough. You have to be exceptional. You have to be the best of the best. And so a lot of the problem is, in the eyes of Microsoft, until Xbox is beating PlayStation or the number one biggest brand in gaming, or the most profitable brand in gaming, whether it's through streaming, online, or digital storefronts or hardware, whatever the case is, whatever angle it's trying to compete with, it has to be the highest revenue generating competitor in that space. And in that regard, Xbox is not succeeding. And that's the problem, is we have to define the success of Xbox. If fucking, I don't know, what's a failing tech company? I don't know if fucking, maybe not failing, but a small tech company relative to Microsoft. If Panasonic owned the Xbox division, they would be fucking thrilled to be the arbiters of the brand, to be the ones raking in the money that comes as a result of shepherding Xbox. But it's because Microsoft that it's not. And that brings to question, that with everything we were just talking about, brings into question Cronky's topic here, where he says, it's worth noting that Xbox leaving the console market might hurt PlayStation as well. Initially, it would look like all those sales would just go to PlayStation if Xbox bowed out, but I think it would serve as a stronger signal that the time to leave the console space is now, and people would probably just exodus to PC. It's so annoying that console gaming industry is failing, because while it's more profitable than ever, companies only want to pursue avenues that have a limitless ceiling. It's so stupid. They can't just say, This is profitable. This is a profitable business. They have to abandon it because it will never be the biggest industry. Yeah, I have, and amen. That is the problem with, I mean, if you really want to go into it, that's the problem with the fucking American industry and capitalism as a whole. And I'm not trying to be all socialist or left leaning or whatever if people want to interpret that as a political thing. I mean, listen, if you are a rational adult with a mind, you can realize there are pros and cons to everything in capitalism, whether you're for it, against it, or you're just a rational human being who understands there are pros and cons to everything. This is a huge con to our capitalist society as we experience it in the United States in the modern age, where this is a huge problem. These big companies gobble up everything, and it's not enough for something to just be successful, to have ups and downs, strong quarters, stronger quarters, slightly underwhelming quarters, strong quarters, ups and downs, roller coaster. That's not enough. You have to be on a never-ending, unrealistic, by any means necessary, ascent to the fucking top at all times, or else fuck you, we're cutting you off, you're a failure. And it sucks because we're constantly being fed this narrative that like Xbox is really struggling because it's constantly being measured to PlayStation. Xbox is really struggling because Game Pass subscribers aren't where they internally want them to be by this point based on projections from a few years ago. Xbox is really struggling because stupid temporary trends that happened during the pandemic shifted back to normal after the pandemic because anyone with half a fucking brain cell could have told you that people wouldn't stay locked inside their houses for the rest of forever playing Fortnite. And the problem is, like I said, if you were Panasonic and you had the Xbox brand, can you imagine like a once great company? I guess this is only kind of a tech company, like Kodiak or something like that, like a fucking camera company that was killing it in the 80s and shit, that just is a fucking husk of its former self. Can you imagine a company like that? Like, we own the Xbox brand. You'd be over the goddamn moon. You'd be like, holy shit, what can we do to make sure we don't lose this? Because this is such a great a business model for us. This is so great to be in this space. And that's the problem is Microsoft is so big, they're so bad, they're so dominant that it's not enough for their gaming division to be number 2 or number 3 or number 4 in the space. It has to be number 1. And if it's not number 1 in consoles are a fucking failure and we need to move on to services. And if it's not number 1 in services, then we need to bounce out of the brand altogether, cut our losses and get out of here. We'll just get people to subscribe to Azure and Office and all that crap. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And so, I don't know, it is frustrating because console gaming is more profitable than ever. And they talk about, these executives and former executives of PlayStation and Xbox, and they talk about how games are more expensive than ever before to make, and there are only so many console gamers. It's basically the same pool of people, and you keep selling new hardware to the same pool of people. And so, Xbox is always talking about how can we expand outside of that pool of people, the same group of people that decide between PlayStation and Xbox every 7 or 8 years. How can we expand outside of that and get new people to come into our community and our ecosystem? Listen, there's no problem with intrinsically trying to do that and going for that. Like, I understand it's your obligation as a business to try and grow, and that's fine, but don't write off the business or put it, in jeopardy or make hasty decisions and upend the business model altogether in favor of doing something drastic just because you're so keen on trying to get to number 1, Don't start taking all your fucking first-party games and throwing them on PlayStation in hopes that it makes Xbox revenue, whether it's coming from hardware or software or services, suddenly bigger than PlayStation, because it's a slow and steady kind of thing. And I think that's the biggest shame of all. Because if I were the arbiter of the Xbox brand, if I owned Xbox and Xbox was an independent company owned and operated by me, I'd be fucking thrilled with Xbox. First of all, we would obviously not have the money to do Game Pass. That's something you gotta have Microsoft money to do. But an Xbox that is exactly what it is right now today, minus putting your games on other people's platforms and minus Game Pass, I'd be totally fucking happy with that. Are we a distant second to PlayStation? Yeah. Does it mean we're not making money? No. So who gives a shit? I don't know. It's so frustrating, dude. I was at my girlfriend's birthday. She was like, I want to make like a coconut mojito thing. She asked me if I could make her like a coconut mojito because I have like 7 months of bartending experience. So apparently I can make cocktails. So we were at Target and they had like a little liquor store. And so we went in there to look at some rum. And then I was just looking at the Japanese whiskey because I worked in a little hipster restaurant where I learned like the most basic amount of Japanese whiskey. And I was like, oh yeah, I was telling her about this one Japanese whiskey make that actually like got out of the business a couple of years ago because it was like a family run business and the family got older and they decided, you know, we made our money, we did our thing. We're stepping back. We're retiring the brand. We're retiring the whiskey. We're not making this anymore. And the value of like one of their bottles of whiskey that used to be like $60, $70 was skyrocketing. They were like hundreds of dollars. And, you know, certain higher end whiskeys they had were going for thousands and thousands of dollars a bottle. And she just laughed and she was like, that's so funny because in America that would literally never be allowed to happen. They would they'd either force it onto their kids to run the business or they would sell it off to some bigger company and they'd go public or whatever. And of course, and it's funny. Like it was just like a little like humorous chuckle, move on, whatever. You don't think about it again. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's so fucking true because that is how everything works here. It's not enough to be like, hey, we were passionate about a thing. We created a business. We started doing the thing. We made a lot of money off of it. We were really successful in that endeavor. We were proud of the work we did. And then we got old, retired and said, it was great while it lasted. Let's move on. You know, the world keeps turning, but that's not enough. And especially when you're Microsoft, it's not enough. It's not enough to just be like, oh, look at this little Xbox thing. It makes money. We're proud of it. It's just got to be like, nah, fuck you. We got to be better than PlayStation. Listen, I get you got to be a little. You got to try to flip the script a little bit if you're hemorrhaging players, if you're losing players, if you're becoming less profitable. Then it's like you got to look at it and say, well, what can we do to keep this brand healthy? Because we obviously want the brand to be healthy. We want it to last forever. We want it to or last long enough that we can continue to employ the people that make this thing run. I understand that angle of it. But like, it's just this, I don't know. It's just like this, like all or nothing mentality. If Windows Phone can't beat iPhone and Android, Windows Phone isn't worth doing. If Xbox can't be bigger than PlayStation, that Xbox isn't worth doing. It's like, really? So I don't know. I know we're really off topic, but I just wanted to bring that up because it seemed like a somewhat adjacent topic. And we're already talking about this precarious situation that Xbox seems to be in. And just how, I don't know, man, it's just so hard to read. Like, what are they doing? Are they coming out with a Pro model to compete with PlayStation 5 Pro? Is that even worth pursuing? It's such a low returns kind of effort. Are they going to jump head first into the next generation a full year before PlayStation? Are they just going to fold it all and say, fuck it, we're out of hardware? Like, I believe all of those scenarios right now with where we are. It all sounds plausible. Oh wait, I wanted to also throw this in there. Mike Clark also wrote in with a comment that I threw in here. So let's just put this in as well and see. He says, I would argue if hardware was so expensive to R&D and release, why bother with such a tiny jump from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, etc., etc.? I wish Microsoft and Sony would be more like Nintendo and just let PC have the power narrative. What happened to them since making the move to x86 hardware? Broken games, 5 to 7 year development cycles, $200 million plus game developments. Mike Clark, this is a good point, but I'm not sure that the jump to x86 architecture is what did this. I understand that is what made console gaming more, the architecture of console gaming more PC-centric, which just was, the idea was to make a more even stack so it'd be easier for developers to make a game on PC and have it be easily scalable and portable to PlayStation and Xbox and everything. It was designed to help make gaming development more streamlined and accessible. But I'm not sure. I mean, that may play a role in why it is so expensive to make games, why it takes so long to get games out, and why games are so broken and buggy. But I think the bigger reason is just that the more powerful consoles get, in general, I guess that is really what you're getting to. It's not the type of hardware or architecture. You're just talking about the idea of trying to get PC power or PC parity in terms of power on console gaming. And in that regard, listen, man, I agree with you to an extent. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I don't like having I still use my Xbox One all the time. I use it every fucking night because I always put on TV as I'm nodding off to bed, whether it's fucking YouTube, like lo-fi on YouTube, or I'm watching a hockey game, or I just put on some freaking Disney Plus something, in the background to fall asleep to. And I'll tell you what, man, my poor little Xbox One from like February 2014 is chugging along like a bitch. It's rough. You turn that thing on, it takes like a full minute and a half for it to just really boot up. And then you like try to go to Hulu or YouTube or whatever, it takes you another minute to get in there. It's slow. It's a fucking process. It sucks. Conversely, I go downstairs and I turn on the Xbox Series X to go play Wasteland 3 or whatever. I'm from Xbox completely shut down to playing my game in like 40 seconds. It's amazing. It's crazy. And if I'm on quick resume, way less than that. It's like 7 seconds. I'm like from Xbox being off to being in a game playing. It's insane. So I'm not going to say I don't appreciate more powerful hardware, newer bells and whistles, nice features, all these things. I appreciate it quite a bit. And I appreciate a game that is beautifully rendered in 4K and a game that runs at a buttery smooth 60 FPS. And I really do appreciate all those things. But I think there is a point where it's like, okay, enough is enough. Because I think we were talking about this on the podcast like a week or two ago, right? Like I have that thing still where, you know, like I've been playing a lot of 360 games recently because I've been tackling my backlog, I feel like, in the past few years. And like, for example, when I was playing Dead Space 2 years ago, I want to say it was, when I played Dead Space for the first time 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? Dead Space looks fucking amazing on my Xbox Series X. This 2008 horror game for the Xbox 360 looks amazing on my current hardware. And at that time, we were about 5 months, 6 months out from Dead Space Remake coming out. And listen, I know Dead Space Remake looks and runs a hell of a lot better than the original Dead Space. But to me, Dead Space on Xbox 360 sufficed very well. It looked and ran great. And I'm not saying I think all games should look and run like Xbox 360 games, but I am saying I think we kind of hit the point of like good enough. And I don't need every game to try and look better than the last game I played. I'm with you, man. If games can like be less open world, have fewer side quests, settle for like a more standard graphical fidelity, you know, maybe don't worry so much about the beads of sweat on all the NPCs' foreheads. Like it's okay if the character's cape doesn't blow beautifully in the wind with the most realistic physics. It's just fine. I don't care if my character jumps out of the water and doesn't appear to be soaking wet. It's okay. I appreciate on some more realistic games like The Last of Us, it's very admirable, it's very pretty. But for the most part, I don't fucking care. And we can just have the game just be a fun game. So I don't know. I'm with you, man. It's to some extent it is a detriment because they're not able to get these consoles out at a profitable price range. So you have like Xbox and PlayStation competing to lose money on this expensive hardware they sell you. And then they hope that they make the money back in game sales, but the games are becoming more expensive to make. It is a lose, lose, lose all around. But I think at this point it'd be a little too, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a losing battle to be like, hey, we're going to take a step back. You know, like I don't know how you market that if you're Xbox and you get up on stage next year and you're like, introducing the Xbox Series number 5. And you're like, this console is actually less powerful than the Series X, and it's slower than the Series X, and games look worse. But in return, we promise, games are going to come out faster. You're going to get more great games at a faster rate. Games are going to have fewer problems when they come out. They're going to come out more content complete, more buttoned up and bug-free and everything. And we promise games will just be focused on really fun experiences without all the headaches and problems you've been dealing with the past 10 years. Like, that sounds great to someone like me, but I just don't think you can say that. I don't think you can market that. I don't know if we're there yet, you know? Like, I don't know if people want a more lo-fi experience from their AAA games and if they want to be sold an inferior product. This year's iPhone has a worse camera and poor resolution on the screen, but we promise better battery life and fewer glitches with iOS 17. It's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, sure, it sounds nice to have those things, but I don't want to lose shit to get it. So I don't know. I think they've made their bed and they have to lay in it. It is about power when it comes to Xbox and PlayStation. I guess I would say that the bigger thing is to try and balance it. Make it less about trying to be as powerful as can fucking be for a good price, and just be like, it's powerful enough. It's a bump in power, but you know, we're more focused on, you know, development tools and making the platform accessible to developers and making it easier to get great games built on this hardware rather than being like, ooh, 4K, 8K, 9K, 12K resolution at 120 FPS. Like, calm down. I don't know. Let's move on because I think I'm starting to like tire myself out with a whole bunch of nothing. So let's move on to the only other thing there is to talk about. Normally, this is kind of seen as like a wrap-up topic, the new Xbox Game Pass games coming to the service. But we have what is seriously one of, if not the best month in Game Pass coming up here as we round out March with just some fucking insane games. So I just want to, I mean, goddamn, dude. I just want to go over the games coming to Xbox Game Pass Actually, most of these are out by the time you're listening to it, or will be out in less than a week. But yeah, let's just go through this. So, as the time you're listening to this podcast, The Quarry is already out on cloud and console. This is that horror game from the guys that made Until Dawn on PlayStation a few years back. This is their new game that came out last summer. It was kind of seen as, I feel like the general consensus is like, this game is pretty fun, but not worth $70. For Game Pass, I think this is a fucking great get. I'm glad I held off on this game because I wanted to play it, didn't get around to it, didn't want to pay $70 at launch, just couldn't get back to it. And now it's on Game Pass. And I feel like for Game Pass, this is a fucking steal. It's a great choose your own adventure style, like camp slasher style horror game. Very similar to their Dark Picture anthology games or Until Dawn. So if you're familiar with those games, The Quarry should be right up your alley. But this is a really great get. This is a perfect match for Game Pass, and I feel like is 100% something I need to jump into, something I definitely want to play. The next game that's also out as of the time you're listening to this podcast is Evil West, coming to cloud, console, and PC. This game came out at the end of 2022, so it's a little over a year old. I played this game the day it came out. I bought it the day it came out, and I raved about this game. If you were listening to the podcast back then, you know I absolutely adore this game. My quick synopsis is like, if you yearn for games that are just very Xbox 360 in terms of like linear levels, excellent combat, maybe not the most like highly polished, most AAA thing you've ever played, but just a really fun, unique, all around badass, awesome M-rated action game, something similar to like a Gears of War style experience. Evil West is a game you need to play. Vampire cowboys, awesome guns, badass combat, really cool lore, really cool story, really unique characters and concept and everything. This game is so fucking good. Play a game like Evil West and then go play a game like Far Cry 6. I'm not saying one's good and one's bad, but night and day, you'll see what I mean when I talk about the good old days of the Xbox 360 versus the modern day of like bloat, 2,000 people making a game, $300 million AAA. Why'd it have to be this big? Why'd it have to be this pretty? Why'd it have to be this over budget? Why'd it have to be like this, you know? And you see why I fucking yearn for the games of yesterday, because Evil West is a beautiful little gem. I cannot recommend this game enough. So thankfully I've played this game already, so it's not another game I have to add to the backlog. But if you have not played Evil West, I beg you, give the game 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You don't even have to give it a full hour of your life. Give it 30, 45 minutes. And if you don't like it, I will personally come to your house and punch you in the face, because you are the problem. This game is great. So that's Evil West. Next up is Terra Invicta. I don't know what that is. It's a game preview game. It's on Game Pass, PC only. And then March 28th, so next week, Diablo 4 comes to console and PC. So this is the first Activision game to come to Game Pass. Obviously, we've known about this for a little while now. Very exciting. I've very much been trying to get my slate clean so that I can play this when it comes out. So very much looking forward to Diablo 4. Obviously, the biggest get for Game Pass this year so far. I know people are really excited about this one, myself included, so I cannot wait to dive into this. Then next, another really pleasant surprise, especially considering right now I'm going back and replaying through some of the first one. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 rather, comes the same day as Diablo 4, next week on the 28th. Cloud, console, and PC. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2. This is great. I did not pick this game up when it came out last year because there's just too many games and not enough money, and I was in the process of moving. I just couldn't fit it all in. So this was one of the games that got the chopping block from my fall video game budget. And wow, 6 months later, here it is on Game Pass. So this game looks fucking phenomenal. The first Hot Wheels Unleashed is so great. It is a Hot Wheels game clearly made for adults that grew up loving Hot Wheels, and much, it's still great for kids, but you can tell it is a very serious racing game made with all the love and passion from giant man children who grew up loving Hot Wheels. And from what I understand, the second one is just more of the first one. So I'm very much looking forward to that as well. And then the next game that also comes out next week on the 28th is a day one Game Pass game, cloud, console, and PC. Open Roads. This is another game I'm very excited to play. I actually kind of forgot when this game was coming, so I'm a little pleasantly surprised / caught off guard that it's so soon. But Open Roads is it's one of those like walking sim type 4-hour narrative games like Gone Home, where everybody's gone to the rapture or what have you. This is actually made by the team that made Gone Home. They're under a different name because there was some controversy with management at the team. But anyway, This is basically the same team that made games like Gone Home and Tacoma and such. And this is their new game called Open Roads. And it's about a mother and a daughter on a road trip and kind of like the drama and everything that unfolds during their journey together. And it's one of those, like, I don't really need to know the synopsis. I don't really need to see the game trailer or anything like that. These guys have won me over so fucking much with their previous efforts that I know this is a game I'm going to love. I know this is a game I want to experience. Just fucking let me play it. So Open Roads, another must-play game. Looks phenomenal. And then we also have Ark Survival Ascended, comes to cloud console and PC on April 1st. F1 23 comes to cloud via EA Play on April 2nd. And then lastly, Super Hot Mind Control Delete comes to cloud console and PC on April 2nd. And then on March 31st, the following 3 games will leave Game Pass. That is Hot Wheels Unleashed. The first one is leaving because you're getting the second one to replace it, so it's kind of like a even trade. Then Infinite Guitars leaves cloud console and PC. I actually downloaded that and never played it, so give it a try before it's gone if you want to give it a go. And then lastly, MLB The Show 23 will be leaving Game Pass again because it's trading out for MLB The Show 24. So it's kind of an even trade there. You're just kind of updating with the most recent iteration. So for the most part, you're not losing anything too notable because you're just getting those games replaced with their newer entries. So again, from the way I see it, between how little we're losing and how much we're getting, I mean, like, if I had played none of these games, I would strongly recommend The Quarry, Evil West, Diablo 4, Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, Open Roads. That's 5 games. In the course of 1 week, you were getting 5 games I highly recommend that are coming to Game Pass. Thankfully, I've already played one of those games, so for me, it's only 4 games. But still, I mean, that's insane. That is insane value. And so I don't know, man. Like, there's a couple games coming out right now, a couple games that have recently come out that I want to get into. I wanted to play that Star Wars Battlefront collection, but fuck no. With all those problems, I'm not spending $35. I'm just going to enjoy all these new games included in my Game Pass subscription I'm already paying for. So, man, this is a good fucking month for Game Pass. Quarry is one. The way I see it is like The Quarry and Open Roads are some good weekend games. You play those through a weekend, and that's that. Nice little easy breezy experiences. Diablo 4, that's a game you can sink like 100 hours into. I don't think I'll play it that much. I'd be surprised if I play more than 20, 30 hours of Diablo. And then Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 will be one of those games that you just kind of play in the background. So it's a before bed kind of game. So like I'm trying to tackle this and figure out how I'm even going to play these because I'm still playing through Dead Island 2, Wasteland 3. I still want to get to Atlas Fallen. What the fuck is the game? Whatever. I don't know. So much to play right now. And I just want to give a little special highlight to this month's Game Pass because some really good shit. This is the kind of stuff I'm always talking about. I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, I promise, but just a quick little note, a little side note, a pin in it. This is very much the way I felt during the Xbox One years as well. It's like, I know the narrative is always Xbox doesn't have games. Why would you get Xbox? This and that, like all the complaints about it. It's like, I have never felt like primarily, having Xbox be my primary place to play, like I haven't had enough good games to play. And I feel increasingly more than ever before overwhelmed by how many games there are to play on Xbox. So, I mean, dude, between all these games coming to Game Pass right now, the games I already have in my back catalog that I was planning on playing imminently, plus the games I'm currently playing through right now, like I'll be busy easily until late spring, early summer at the very earliest with just this shit right here. Like, just so much to play. Like, the stress isn't where are the games, when do I have something to play. It's, I got to worry about fucking Hellblade coming out and then distracting me from all these games now because there's just so much. But I don't know. Where are the games on Xbox? I don't fucking know. Rub your goddamn eyes and try to open them, you stupid blind motherfucker. Anyway, God bless you. God bless you, blind motherfuckers. That's going to do it for all our big news. Let's wrap up now with the important enough news stories important enough to make the podcast, but not important enough to warrant their own discussions. We have a handful, so let's just fly through them. First one here is that Xbox is making changes to its rewards program. They are launching a new site called Rewards with Xbox, in which players will access. It's a rewards hub for all their Microsoft rewards, Xbox rewards. It combines all the Xbox console, mobile app, and Windows app stuff into one rewards hub. People on Reddit are kind of up in arms about it, but it will officially take over after April 15th, where the current store will shut down. From what I understand, it's more or less the exact same features and benefits, but the way you access it is a little different. And so we'll have to see if it's a change for the better or for the worse, but just know that change is coming if you're like me and you use the Xbox rewards frequently. Next up, Arcane founder Raphael Tonio has begun working on his next game. He's teasing it, and he describes it as a retro sci-fi RPG first-person game. Colatonio and Julian Robbie, former executive producer at Arcane, announced in 2019 that they'd left to form a new team called Wolfeye Studio. The pair are currently working on their new game, which was shown briefly at GDC with some announcement info and some screenshots and stuff like that, or concept art rather. So we'll have to follow up with that game when we see more, but clearly they're hard at work on something. Next up, the Callisto Protocol developer Striking Distance Studios has revealed a new spin-off game that is tentatively titled Project Bird Eye. It is set in the Callisto Protocol universe, but it is not a sequel to the game. It is just a spin-off. It is a top-down twin-stick shooting roguelike game set in the same universe, but is completely done as a side project with a small team working on it alongside their next full-scale AAA game. Guys, go look at the trailer for this game if you have any interest in a top-down twin-stick shooting action roguelike game. This game looks fucking awesome. The art style is just awesome. It's like Comic Zone oozy, green slime, cartoony comic book horror goodness. And I mean, clearly they're not ready to really put this thing out in any meaningful way. I don't even know that this is the proper name for the game, or if it's just a working title and they don't have a release date or anything, a release window. But from what they showed in this minute and 20-second trailer, the gameplay looks so fucking glorious. This looks like a wonderful, action-packed, kind of just arcadey fun time. So I'm very much looking forward to giving this game a try, actually. Next up, Gotham Knights developer WB Montreal is actually working on the upcoming Wonder Woman game. According to a job listing spotted by Tech for Gamers, the studio which most recently made Gotham Knights, and before that Batman Arkham Origins, is now working on the Wonder Woman game, which is being made by Monolith Productions, but are getting the support work from WB Montreal. Next up, Overwatch 2 Heroes will be free at release, starting with the launch of Season 10 in mid-April. In a development update released this week, game director Aaron Keller said players will no longer have to purchase a premium battle pass to unlock new characters and grind for hours to unlock them. They will just be available at launch with each new season. And then finally, from a PlayStation former head of internal production, Connie Booth has joined EA. She's a longtime veteran at PlayStation, a longtime producer who was credited with a lot of PlayStation's production success. And so she was basically outed from the company last year and is now joined EA, as IGN reports. In her new role, she'll oversee the Dead Space remake and Iron Man studio EA Motive, the Black Panther developed Cliffhanger Games, and Dragon Age and Mass Effect house BioWare, which is great because she was credited with a lot of production pipeline stuff, and if EA needs help with anything, it's with production pipeline stuff, especially with teams like BioWare. So this seems like a really fitting place to put someone like this, and so hopefully she's able to help turn things around over there because she seems like a great talent. So that's a pretty notable job movement. That's going to do it for all of our news this week, you guys. It's time for the last, final, and best segment of the podcast. The comments, the shout-outs, the YouTube stuff. You head on over to youtube.com/XboxOnPodcast. That's at XboxOnPodcast at youtube.com. Type in a comment, say anything nice, anything mean, anything in between, and I will read it on this podcast. I'm desperate for your feedback. I'm desperate for your engagement. So you can just belittle me like a little fuckboy, and I will still read your comment because, God damn it, I need you. All joking aside, as a little side note, I would like to say, please, if you enjoy the show, if you have the time and are willing to do so, be so gracious with your time and effort and energy to just leave a 5-star review for the podcast on whatever podcast service you listen to. I recently, and for the first time, checked out the ratings for this show on Spotify, because I just never checked to check Spotify. And I saw it, and the show has like an average rating of it's like a 4.4 or 4.6 out of 5. So I saw that and I was like, hey, for one fucking idiot who does this show all by himself and it doesn't work in the game space and doesn't really know jack shit, he's just trying out here. I'm like, I'm pretty satisfied with that rating. It's pretty good. That's like a 86% approval rating or something like that. Whatever. I don't remember what it was. It was like 4.4 or 4.6. I was like, this is pretty great. I appreciate all you guys reviewing and listening to the podcast and supporting the show. And then I just did the thing you're not supposed to do, and I compared myself to all the other Xbox podcasts. So I started typing the name of like 5 or 6 other Xbox podcasts I know the name of, and they all had like 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.8, 4.9 star ratings. And I was like, oh shit, I suck. I was like, does that mean, is a 4.6 like the equivalent of like a 3 out of 5 in podcast realm? Because like, why would someone rate your podcast unless they like the podcast? Because people who don't like the podcast aren't going to go through the hoop jumping of leaving a negative review. So I'm like, it got in my head a little bit. So maybe this is just me being arrogant. Maybe this is just me being insecure. Maybe this is something that you probably almost definitely don't have to concern yourself with because you have bigger things to worry about than my insecurities. But I would appreciate it if you just leave a nice 5-star review if you enjoy the show. And as I always say, half joking, half, whatever. If you don't enjoy the show, that's fine. To each their own. I appreciate it. Don't leave a fucking review. I don't need your review because that's gonna weigh it down. I'm not trying to appeal to more people like you that don't enjoy the show. I'm trying to appeal to more people that do enjoy the show. So just conflate my ego, conflate the numbers, leave a 5-star review, make me feel good about myself, so I'd feel like everything meant something. Like majoring in literature in college wasn't a big waste of time, and that maybe my dad was wrong about me, and I'm not just a fucking failure, and that one day I will amount to something. But of course, my dad's a PlayStation fan, so you can imagine what Thanksgiving dinner's like at our family. Anyway, we have 7 write-ins left because we've read a couple of them throughout the show, and so let's start out with the first comment. That this is one of those rare comments that like I read it and I literally had to like double take and then laugh out loud. Corny Puddle 48. I don't know if you changed your name or if this is your first time writing in, but either way, thank you for writing in. It said, if you got me to stand while you sat and said the pledge, I swear. And this is a reference to last week where I did that silly little Xbox Pledge of Allegiance I made up in celebration of episode 250. I appreciate the comments. It seems like a lot of you guys thought that was quite silly, so I appreciate that. But I'm reading this comment in particular because I didn't even think about it. I was just being a fucking idiot recording the podcast. But yeah, Corny Puddle, I 100% was sitting down in my comfy-ass desk chair reading my little Pledge of Allegiance off of Microsoft OneNotes while seemingly some of you guys stood up, put your right hand over your chest, over your heart, and recited in the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance. So I apologize for letting you down. I apologize for putting you in a situation where I made you do something that I wasn't even willing to do myself. But thank you for writing in, and thank you for calling me out on my bullshit. Corny Puddle, I hope you have a great week. Don't remember is what I wrote for this. What is this? Oh, yeah. Sentient Thunder Tank wrote in and says, there's no good reason it's failing other than greed and incompetence. I don't know what that was in reference to because I don't remember anything ever from anything I ever say on a podcast. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about. I'm sorry. Thank you, Ryan, Sentient Thunder Tank. Mike Clark writes in. This is the final time we have Mike Clark for the week. Please don't get mad. Don't get mad. He writes in, and I'm always grateful for his write-ins, and I'm always happy to read them on the show. So please, if you think this show has too much Mike Clark, do me a favor. Go find a podcast that has less Mike Clark, because I'm willing to bet you that podcast sucks donkey dick. So Mike Clark writes in and says, sorry, Jesse, but I despise the streaming/digital future. No sense of attachment equals no sense of culture. They want us to digest literal dog shit and enjoy it, giving them the satisfaction of control. If we cling to something other than them, it breaks their power. We can't have that. Okay, so what are you saying? What are you saying we do, Mike? Listen, man, the streaming digital future is inevitable. I understand the people that love the physical media, and I don't begrudge you for holding on to it and trying to continue to support it. I think that's great. I think you should always support the things you want to see more of, the things that make you happy, the things that you like. Just like how I think everyone should buy every Sonic the Hedgehog video game, so we never stop getting more Sonic games. But the majority will speak, and they say digital. Listen, you think as an American I'm proud to see all car manufacturers go away from manual transmissions? It's impossible. It's increasingly impossible to buy a car with a manual transmission. You know what the worst part about it is too? Because manual transmissions, cars with manual transmissions, can't speak, have become such a fuckboy thing in the US. It's like such an obvious thing that's like the only people who want manuals are like teenage asshole drivers who want to go speed crazy and everything. Is that now the only cars left in this country you can buy with a manual transmission are either silly sports cars, or like super targeted nostalgia bait vehicles. Like, ooh, we brought back the Toyota Supra, but now it's not a fucking $18,000 everyday car. It's a fucking $80,000 BMW with a manual transmission that only rich people can afford. I hate this. I hate this movement. It sucks. Do you know how badly I wish I could just drive a boring ass 140 horsepower fucking hatchback daily commuter, but it has a manual transmission? That's all I want. That's all I want. I just want to fucking. Why can't the Subaru Crosstrek still have a manual? Why they had to take the manual out of the Crosstrek? Doesn't make sense to me. But the audience spoke, and they said, no, we just want automatic transmissions. It's easier. We're Americans. We don't like to cook. We prefer the drive-thru. I don't understand why I shouldn't subscribe to Blue Apron and what's the other one that's big now? Crave or Future or whatever the fucking one where it's like powered protein one. What's the other? Blue Apron's so dated. Why the fuck is that the one that came to mind? What's the biggest one? The one that's green and yellow is the logo or whatever. Everyday Fresh. Hello Fresh. I don't fucking know. We're American, man. We want it easy. We want it slow. We want it dumb. Okay. That's why you're getting streaming and digital everything for the future, because when it comes to games, people like the convenience and the ease of streaming and digital. No one wants to shift gears every time they go a little faster or slow down their car. They want the car to do that for them. And not all of us want to pop a game into our Xbox. We want the Xbox to read our fucking minds and put on the game, okay? I'm sorry, Mike Clark. The future is inevitable, and it's not always bright. All right, Tim R. writes in and says, I put this for the love of local multiplayer. He said, your anecdote about Sea of Thieves is exactly why I play split-screen multiplayer with my wife. The only difference is that we can't afford 2 consoles and a handheld streaming device. I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying I wish more multiplayer games had couch co-op. I'm looking at you, Halo Infinite. Tim R, no, I totally get it. And early in the podcast, a couple years ago when Halo Infinite came out, I was pretty harsh on like, why do people care about couch co-op? Why is this so important to people? You guys are overreacting. No one uses this feature. But I have come around to it a little bit in recent years where like, I get it. It's like saying, you know, why aren't kids okay with just like fucking hanging out in VR chat? Why do they have to go over each other's houses and hang out in person? Why do kids want to meet up at the mall and hang out as opposed to just, you know, fucking, I don't know, what do kids do? Go play Fortnite together. I get it. There's something different about the in-person, more intimate communal experience of playing a game together in the same room. I don't personally enjoy it for the most part. I actually really dislike it. I hate it when my TV is split in 2 screens. It drives me nuts. But I do understand the appeal of experiencing something with someone in person, side by side, in real time, as opposed to being 30 miles apart from each other or states apart from each other or, you know, whatever it is. So I get it, and I'm with you in that. For just the sake of keeping the human experience intact and keeping people together, I say more couch co-op, but also dumb down your games so that's not so taxing on the hardware to do co-op. It shouldn't be that hard. All right, we got a couple of wrap-up comments. First one of my favorites. You know him well, you love him. He's got this man. I swear to God, when he wears pleated shorts, you see his booty. It's a big fucking booty, this man. Sam Frito, everybody. He writes it and says, Jesse, proud of you and your girlfriend for making time to Sea of Thieves in the evening. That's awesome. Humorous dating story is going to be older than Beetlejuice in theaters because I'm old as cable boxes on TV sets. I used to be a gravedigger for a cemetery, and I didn't announce that on first dates ever. Morbid ideas. I'd say, oh, I work out in the field, thinking that they just think that that the vagueness would be a hint of super secret FBI type occupations. But most of the time, girls would think I was a migrant worker or some shit. I did go on a date. Nothing wrong with that. I did go on a date with this one girl who said, I work in a graveyard too. When I told her my field spiel, she said, too bad she was lying and trying to get out of any future dates. And then you just hard right and go, Del Taco has such an extended menu. I wouldn't be surprised if Del Spaghetti is somewhere on it. Del Spaghetti would be wonderful. I would definitely give that a try. But you wrap up and said, sorry for taking another comment slot, but congrats on episode 250. You stayed the course regardless of what foul things Lethal Migraine ever said. You are a celebrated part of Xbox. To me, Jesse, Macho Burrito. All right, seriousness aside, goofiness second. Thank you, Sam. I really do appreciate your words, and to all of you guys, you know, I appreciate, of course, everyone listening, but especially to those of you, the names I recognize from at this point, the years of podcasting, who've been here, listening to the show, leaving comments and just engaging. I truly appreciate you guys. And I, not to be like so fucking cringy and after school special about it, but I would have given up on this podcast so fucking long ago if it weren't for people like you. So that's literally the only reason I do it, is because I enjoy having this little corner of the world where we can all chat about what Phil Spencer's doing wrong and talk about games from 4 years ago that I'm just now coming around to. So thank you. But yeah, I love the anecdote about being a grave digger and how there's just like, there's something very like Curb Your Enthusiasm, like Larry David about that, or Seinfeld about that, where it's like, there's just, you're kind of like forever set to be fucked with an occupation like that, where, and it also sucks so bad because it's like, there's nothing wrong with that field of work. It's a totally admirable, respectable, real job. Someone's got to do that work. But at the same time, it's like, it's like such a fucking obstacle to get over with anyone. But the thing is, if you do that work and you finally meet a girl who will come around to you, one of two things. Either she's one of those creepy goth girls and she wants to like make out in the cemetery, in which case I say run in the other direction as fast and far as you can go. Or number two, she's a fucking real one and she's not so vain that she can't get past what you do for work and she can like you for who you are. In which case, hey, a girl who can get over something like that on the first date and see past that and appreciate you for who you are and not judge you for it, that's a pretty promising first date. That's all I'm saying. Dude, first dates, side note, first dates suck. First dates are the worst thing in the world. I'm so grateful that I came up, like, I feel like my age range is kind of the most ideal for dating in some ways, because it was like during the early days of widespread internet dating where it wasn't unheard of still for people to like ask one another out or ask for someone's number or something like that. But it also wasn't like 100% the only way people met was via like online and dating apps. So it wasn't like all fucked and broken and corrupt like it is now, where like you're just trying to meet someone online and everyone's just trying to use people for nudes and free dinners and shit. So I feel like I kind of came in at the perfect time. When I'm very lucky. I only really was ever in 2 serious relationships and I did very little dating outside of that. So I never had, a lot of bad interaction with like bad first dates or just really cringy, uncomfortable interactions with the opposite sex, except for one. There was literally only one, and it wouldn't have happened if I didn't hang out with this stupid piece of shit at the time, because there's this one guy I used to hang out with in high school, and he pushed me so hard. We were at a concert, and there was this cute girl, and I was like probably 17 at the time. And he pushed me, I was like 16 or 17. He pushed me so hard to talk to her. I was like, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not the kind of guy who hits on a girl. I'm not the kind of guy who goes up to a girl and talks to her and is like, oh, hey, you're pretty cool. You want to hang out? Or, oh, what's your number? Or I guess nowadays kids say, what's your fucking snap? And then they just send nudes to each other and never meet up. But back in those days, it was like, okay, this motherfucker didn't really convince me or talk me. He kind of like forced me. It was more like, I'm not giving you a ride home if you don't fucking talk to this girl. And so I had the most awkward, like, hand my phone over to this girl in the middle of a concert and was like, hey, you're cute. Would you mind talking to me, giving me your number, whatever? And the girl, like, gave me her number, and we went on one date, and it was the worst experience ever. Every other girl I've ever dated was always, like, the typical, like, we were friends, we hung out for a while, then we realized we had feelings for each other, and then we started seeing each other. So it was always, like, a really natural, kind of normal progression. But this was the one date I ever went on where it wasn't that. It was the very typical TV sitcom, like, oh, hey, you're cool. You want to meet up? And that was the worst date ever. I was super awkward, just a really shy, nervous, embarrassed piece of shit little teenager. I tried to talk to her. She was very cringy, slightly older, like college girl who was like, yeah, I like to drink alcohol and party with my friends. And I very quickly realized, I was like, I am so in the wrong place with the wrong person right now. And then we just tried to get through the dinner and get through the date. And then at the end of the day, I took her home. I was like, okay, so maybe we could talk again sometime later. And she goes, yeah. And then literally just like cut me off mid-sentence, left my car, immediately blocked my number. And I was like, yeah, dating fucking sucks. And then, thankfully lucky, it worked out for me. What, I don't know, your comment just reminded me of just the sheer misery and horror that is just the blind dating, the stupid dating game, and the typical like, oh, hey, you're cool, you want to hang out sometime kind of shit. And fucking thank God that's not, yeah. I mean, I guess at that time I would have said, I was in high school, so I would have said, I run salad dishes to tables at a steakhouse. That's what I do for a living. And I go to high school. But yeah, I don't know. Your comment reminded me of that. I just want to say, shout out to first dates. They suck. Best kind of relationships. Hang out with a girl, your friends, things just naturally evolve into a relationship. It's always the best shit. Date girls who are genuinely your friends, people you have good relationships with. It's so much fucking better than the other way around. Anyway, not the other way around, but the alternative. Mr. Maug writes in with our penultimate comment, and something that's a little thought-provoking. Back to video games again. We're off the dating topic and back into video games, and says, I hate how a lot of new games, specifically AAA ones, have such a long drawn out. Oh wait, side note about that date. I'll never forget that date because it was 2012. It was November 2012, and the only reason I remember that is because I went on that date with that girl the same week the Wii U and Halo 4 came out. And I remember being like, when I asked this girl out like a week ago, I was excited about it. And now I'm really upset because I want to be home with the Wii U and Halo 4. And I remember leaving that date and be like, oh, that fucking sucked. That whole experience sucked. And then I found it was late. So I found a 24-hour Walmart, went to the Walmart, picked up a Nintendo Wii U Pro Controller. That's right. Now Switch Pro Controller, Wii U Pro Controller. Went home and played Zombie U and Super Mario Bros. U and Halo 4. And I was like, this is significantly better. So anyway, back to Mr. Maug. Mr. Maug says, I hate how a lot of new games, specifically AAA ones, have such a long drawn-out intro/tutorial. It feels almost like they're designed to have you waste your 2-hour grace period before you can return the game, assuming you bought it digitally. This is a really interesting point I never thought of, and this might be a tactic that some developers are employing. Because, you know, like Steam famously has the 2-hour grace period. You buy a game, you got 2 hours of playtime before you can return it. Or otherwise, you're locked in. You have to keep the game. And other, you know, Xbox and PlayStation have like similar kind of things nowadays. But I think Steam's really the one famed for this kind of return policy. But that's interesting. And I'm sure there are some developers who do kind of manipulate this system for that very reason. But simply, I was always under the impression the main reason why, as you say, specifically AAA games have such long, drawn-out tutorials and intros is because they're trying to spoon-feed the game to you because AAA games are so expensive to make and they have to appeal to such a wide swath of people that they're trying to make sure they don't lose you because they have the telemetry that suggests games where the controls are a little vague or the story isn't immediately captivating or the game doesn't immediately make sense can be a little, can be ostracizing to players and turn a lot of people off. And then you end up with this thing where like only 30% of people who played the game actually made it past the first 2 hours of the game. And so you get a lot of games that are very tutorialized, very cinematic, very hand-holdy because they want to make sure you're this perfect combination of hooked into the game, but also not left feeling like, oh, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I don't know what to do. And so it's all that focus testing and all that trying to make sure that your big, expensive $200 or $300 million AAA game isn't wasted on a bunch of people who aren't going to play it. And so you just overly focus test it into the point where it's kind of made for the lowest common denominator. And you, as someone who's probably a more seasoned video game player that doesn't need as much hand holding, is just like, okay, on with it already. Let's get to the fucking game. So I think that's the main reason why that's the case. But yeah, no, I agree. It's frustrating as hell, especially a lot of these like open world games where you don't really feel like you're getting into the game until you're like 4 or 5 hours into it. And that can be frustrating at times. So I totally get that, Mr. Maug. All the more reason why you should just go play Wasteland 3. But let's get into our final comment of the week from Mr. Headhunting Halo, who writes in, dude, I bought like 7 Final Fantasy games on PlayStation Network, having a sale. I'm going to be busy for a while. Also, why is a 32-year-old man like Bluey? Why is it a 32-year-old man likes Bluey? Are you the 32-year-old man that likes Bluey? Because I'm not the 32-year-old man that likes Bluey, so you have some explaining to do. I'm the 32-year-old man who's not 32 yet, but is not too far off from 32, who likes Pixar's Cars, Hot Wheels, Sonic the Hedgehog. I have my own weird closet of kiddie shit I'm still into, but not Bluey, so explain yourself there. Thanks to my daughter also. So you like Bluey thanks to your daughter. Okay. Also, man, you got to get back into gaming. It says you haven't touched your Xbox in 246 days. That makes me sad panda. Love you, boo-boo. Boo-boo Bean, Headhunting Halo, my sweet little boy. How many times do I have to tell you? My profile is appear offline. I play my Xbox every fucking day, okay? I play it every day. If I get this podcast edited and upload fast enough today, I plan on playing like 20 minutes of Hot Wheels Unleashed before I go to bed tonight while I watch some hockey. But that's all contingent on whether or not I get this podcast edited and uploaded within a reasonable time frame. So I just want to let you know, I play my Xbox every damn night. I turn it on at least every damn night. Without a doubt, I'm going to be turning that Xbox One on in my bedroom at least to fucking do some YouTube, Disney Plus kind of bullshit. So Headhunting Halo, believe me, I'm online. Stop making false rumors about me, these accusations. I love you, Boo Boo Bean. You have a good week. You be safe. You be well. And to all of you, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for supporting the show. Remember, 5-star reviews or no review. You have two options, but a 1 through 4-star review is simply not one of them. Be well, be kind, eat delicious food, try those fucking Cantina chicken quesadillas. They're out of this world. And until next week, power your dreams.